Part 103. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1022. No one expected that this timid-looking sister-in-law would be so fierce when she got angry. Yet suffered a few pains and finally couldn't bear it anymore. He didn't dare to fight back. Zhang Hong'ai was watching him eagerly. If he still Zhang Hong'ai probably beat his mother so hard that she wouldn't even recognize his face. He was beaten, but he didn't dare to fight back. At first, he just stood there stupidly and shouldered it, but after discovering that Lily didn't show any mercy to him, Ye finally endured it. Unable to hold on any longer, he started running around the yard, followed by Lily. Ye ran so fast that she couldn't catch up, so she threw the poker in her hand without thinking. Ye hit the back of the head with a dong, and he finally couldn't bear it anymore, picked up his package and ran out the door. "Brother, your wife is too tough, you don't care." When the brothers saw him running away, they were afraid that they would be beaten too, so they hurriedly ran out. As soon as these people ran away, only Zhang Hong'ai was left. Lily's eyes fell on him. When he saw something bad, he also hid outside. Ran out and finally closed the courtyard door. "Zhang Hong'ai, if you run away this time, if you die outside, I will remarry someone else. Don't blame me for being heartless." What she said was remarry, which proved that she also believed that she was married to herself. When Zhang Hong'ai heard this, he felt happy and sad at the same time. He was happy that he had not heard her say that she wanted to marry him for so long, but sad that he finally heard it. It was also when he was about to leave home. At this moment, he also hated Ye. If Ye had not come up with the idea to join the army, he would not have signed up at that time. Now that he was separated from his wife, he stared at Ye fiercely. Ye was still rubbing his head, but when he glared at him, he shrank his shoulders in anger but dared not speak. Zhang Hong'ai endured the joy in his heart and said loudly, "Ba, ba, ba. Tong Yanwuji, I want to live a long life, you can't change my marriage. Even if I die, you have to protect me. Wife, son, wait for me to come back, wait for me to come back, when I come back, I will buy you a lot of food and clothing." He doesn't want to leave yet. Standing by the door, the brothers were afraid that Lily would chase him out later, so they pulled him away quickly. "Wait until I come back." He walked far away, and the howling sound was still coming. Lily saw the poker falling on the ground. The house was deserted. Looking at his disheveled appearance, he thought about how he had just chased someone half the yard like crazy, and then thought about what Zhang Hong'ai said when he left. Suddenly he couldn't help but cover his face and laughed bitterly. Zhang Hong'ai left for half a year. He was not at home. The sixth son had errands at the yamen and his mother was still at home, so he did not join the army and stayed to take care of the family for his brothers. He sent rice and oil to Lily every month, but sometimes he didn't dare to stay too much for fear that Lily would beat him. Zhang Hong'ai warned him before leaving, asking him to treat Lily as his own mother and father. If anything happened to Lily and she lost a hair, she would come back and fight for her life. Back then, Lulu had seen how precious Zhang Hong'ai was, the daughter-in-law he bought halfway, and treated Lily with respect every time. Lily would sometimes ask him about Zhang Hong'ai's whereabouts, and she only knew that he had entered the military for special training, and he was incorporated into the army a few months ago and went to Jiaokang to guard it. It is closer to the foreign tribes than Yingzhou. If Yingzhou is nominally the territory of Daqi, then when it comes to Jiaokang, it is already a chaotic area belonging to the Sangguan. Behind there is Yingzhou, which barely belongs to the territory of Daqi. The front belongs to the Hulan tribe, and the Marmozet and Lulan tribes are sandwiched on the left and right, which is extremely dangerous. Wealth is so easy to earn, but it's just a matter of risking your life. Lulu was just an ordinary policeman. He couldn't answer many questions when asked. Lily kept asking at first, but then gradually stopped asking. She spent most of her time practicing star training every day. Zhang Hongii was very kind to her, and she always wanted to repay this kindness. She was ready to practice martial arts and see if she could find a way to join him and save his life if there was a chance in the future. 2 months later, a cavalry team from Jiaokang beheaded a general of the Marandi tribe. The leader, a soldier named Zhang, was astonishingly brave and powerful. He performed outstandingly in the battle and was summoned by Deng Zhihu. Report his military exploits in a memorial and send them to the capital. This battle reported a great victory, and the new emperor was overjoyed to reward him for his merits. The soldier surnamed Zhang was made an exception and promoted to a partial general. It's already mid-July in Yingzhou, and the power of the autumn tiger is still there. Lily is no longer afraid to go out. She has recently begun to think about whether she should leave Yingzhou. After all, there has been no news from Zhang Hongii for more than half a year since he left. Jiaokang is ahead. There was a struggle with several tribes, and the war was about to break out, and they might break into Yingzhou city at any time. As the farthest border from Qi state, this place is also so close to the Hu tribes. Once a war breaks out, the city will be reduced to a battlefield. People in Yingzhou have been confused recently. There are many fewer foreign traders on the streets. On the contrary, there were more soldiers patrolling with spears and shields. Her mission was always to enter Kyoto. She was going to go to Jiaokang first to see if she could find Zhang Hongii. If she couldn't find him, she was going to enter Beijing. Lulu came here a few days ago and delivered some things. Lily asked him about Zhang Hongii's whereabouts, but he still didn't know. Before going to bed at night, Lily hadn't turned off the lights, and there were footsteps outside the door. The Zhang family's yard was remote, and no one usually came here. Lulu had been here 2 days ago. He usually brought rice, and he also came here about half a month ago. Once in a while, although people came here to fetch water every now and then, most of the time it was during the day, not at night. After all, even uncles and sisters-in-law had to avoid suspicion. When Lily heard the footsteps, her whole body became tense. He picked up a machete and was waiting by the door. The footsteps outside stopped, but there was no knock on the door. Lily frowned, and when she was about to lie down at the crack of the door and look out, she suddenly heard a series of running footsteps, and someone jumped up and grabbed the door. At the top of the wall, she raised her head to look, and saw someone on the wall about 3 meters high, holding onto the base of the wall and rolling over. She hadn't seen the figure clearly yet, but she was ready to strike first, and subconsciously threw the machete in her hand. Even though she felt something was wrong, she just threw the knife out, expecting to hit the person. He knew the strength well, but he didn't expect that the man just twisted his body in mid-air, narrowly avoiding the knife, and shouted "wow" in his mouth. "I used to just hit people, but now they come back and chop me with a knife." It was Zhang Hongii's voice. Lily was relieved at first, and then a little surprised. "Zhang Hongii." He turned over and landed on the ground, wearing a ginger-yellow soft robe. We haven't seen him for a few months, and he still looked the same as before, but his brows seemed a little less impulsive and a little more condensed. Who else could he be if he wasn't Zhang Hongii? "Daughter-in-law, I'm back," he grinned and opened his hand to Lily. Lily rushed towards him, and he smiled even more proudly. The next moment, before he could hold Lily in his arms, Lily had already jumped up and hooked his neck. He bowed his head obediently, thinking that he had not seen the beauty for a long time, so he could enjoying the warm and fragrant soft jade in his arms. Lily didn't expect that the next moment Lily stretched out her hand, grabbed his ear, and twisted it. "Oh, it hurts, please be gentle. Why did you pull my ears as soon as you came back? What would it look like if someone saw you?" He was still the same as before, not daring to struggle after being beaten. Lily hit him, but her mouth was full of laughter. Not willing to admit defeat at all. You don't want to take the right path, but you still like to climb over the wall. Why can't you change this virtue? Tell me, you have been outside for so long and you haven't learned the good virtues. Why do you still have the same bad virtues? He screamed, not daring to grab her hand, and had to let her drag her into the house. I thought you were asleep, didn't I want to wake you up? Who knew you were not asleep yet, waiting for me come back? Is this what people say, what's in your heart, he. Seeing Zhang Hongyi come back, Lily actually breathed a sigh of relief. She hit Zhang Hongyi several times, and most of the unfamiliarity between the two that had been separated for several months was eliminated because of this fight. He came back in a hurry this time, and there was no news beforehand. Lily asked him if he had eaten yet, and started to make a fire without saying anything. Zhang Hongyi sat in the room, staring at her with a smile. The room had not changed much since he left, but maybe it was because he had been gone for a while, and the dilapidated walls seemed a bit familiar. The house was very clean. Lily had obviously kept it in order. He stood up and looked at the rice vat. There was rice in it and water in the water vat. It was obvious that Lulu had lived up to his instructions and had indeed taken good care of Lily. Zhang Hongyi was satisfied in his heart. Lily didn't say anything about caring about him when he came back, but as soon as he entered the house, he asked him if he had eaten, and now lit a fire for him to cook. This feeling of returning home made him nervous all the time when he was in the army. My heart was relieved. There were also ready-made dishes and some dried meat in the house. Lily cut them up and fried a large plate for him. As soon as the meal was ready, she boiled water in the pot. She was about to clean up the aftermath when Zhang Hongyi pulled her to sit down. Come on, don't keep her busy. I'll clean it up later. I won't be able to stay long this time before I leave. He took a big mouthful of rice, obviously hungry. I miss me so much. I'm not used to being without you. He grinned a little silly. He didn't know what he thought of, and he couldn't eat the delicious food in his mouth. She was good at cooking. When he went to the army, he got used to the food she cooked. Zhang Hongyi really couldn't eat those things at first. Everything in the army depends on military merit, and people without skills can't even eat enough. So he started to go because he had a bad temper and was ignorant. He offended many people. Fortunately, several brothers went together later. He was strong and strong. 10 ordinary soldiers could not match one of him. He was fierce enough that people were afraid of him. Not bullied. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1023. Later, he won military honors and climbed up step by step. Zhang Hongyi was bold and rushed towards his future. He went to the battlefield to kill the enemy and thought about being appointed as a general in the future, so he didn't care about life and death. After a few rounds, he aroused the appreciation of Deng Zhihu. I can tolerate everything in the army, but I really couldn't bear to be separated from her at the beginning. Zhang Hongyi was too embarrassed to tell anyone that when he first joined the army, he often heard Lily calling his name in his dreams, Zhang Hongyi, Zhang Hongyi. Sometimes he would instinctively agree during training, and he was punished a lot for this. People laugh at it. But now that Lily was sitting in front of him, he was embarrassed to open his mouth. Hearing that he was about to leave soon after returning this time, Lily frowned and asked, "What's going on?" He took 2 mouthfuls of rice and hesitated. Deng Zhihu appreciates me and plans to promote me. He said that he would let me lead a team deep into the hinterland of Lulan. If I can find out some military information and capture some barbarians, he will adopt me as his adopted son. He is strong and tall. He was very eye-catching among a group of new recruits. Deng Zhihu lived up to his reputation of knowing people well and quickly noticed him. This time I have made a meritorious service and beheaded the enemy. I will reward you based on my merits. Your man is now a partial general and a man with a salary, he said proudly, as if he had remembered something after saying this. Took out a purse bag from his arms and handed it to Lily. This is my salary. After you pick it up, you can buy whatever you want to eat. Seeing his triumphant look, Lily realized that the bag should not contain copper coins, but silver. When it was handed over, it looked like it was still small. Lily didn't reach out to take it. He seemed a little anxious. He put down his chopsticks, took Lily's hand, and put the bag on top. Save it up for me. This will be the capital for marrying a wife in the future. I will work for a few years. After making money, we will go back to Yingzhou and buy land. We will become masters. His words made Lily couldn't help but want to laugh. Seeing Zhang Hongyi shaking his head like a villain, Lily accepted the money and couldn't help but glare at him. Back then I had to be a soldier. Now I can't make any difference. He was not angry even after being scolded. He seemed to still have a nostalgic look on his face. Zhang Hongyi did not stay at home for long. He stayed for the night and left again before dawn the next day. It was a coincidence that he came back because Lily originally wanted to go to Beijing. Now that he has disturbed me and accepted his hot potato money, I can't leave even if I want to, so I have to wait for him for a while longer. 3 months later, when Lulu delivered rice, he gave her the news that Zhang Hongyi had made another meritorious service and had been adopted as his adopted son by Deng Zhihu. At this time, the Daqi border was unstable, and there seemed to be disagreements within the court. The late emperor died too quickly and hurriedly deposed the crown prince and established him as the king of Yu before his death. The deposed crown prince avoided the limelight and hid in his own territory with his remaining troops. Now, after 2 years of rest and recuperation, his power has begun to resurgence. There were rumors in the court that the cause of the late emperor's death was unknown, and that the origin of the Yu king's throne was unknown. There were old officials in the court who were loyal to the late emperor and were worried about the late emperor's death. Under the control of some thoughtful people, these rumors began to get more and more intense. The new emperor was faced with internal and external troubles, unstable borders, and unsatisfactory internal political power, so he planned to eliminate the deposed prince at one fell swoop. It's just that the deposed prince has not really rebelled at this moment. Even if he wants to take action, it would be unavoidable. When the king of Yu came to the throne, he had clearly and blatantly eliminated the remnants of the deposed prince. If he takes action now, it will inevitably leave some traces have a reputation of being mean and unkind. The most important thing is that the new emperor has no troops. Daqi's troops have always been used for external affairs, not internal affairs. If he wants to send troops to suppress the deposed prince, he must send troops from Jiaokang and other places. All the troops of Daqi were dispersed among the major magistrates. This was to prevent the trouble caused by the rebellion of soldiers when the military power was concentrated in one person. The major magistrates have been in charge of military forces for many years and have become established early. The new emperor has only been in power for less than 2 years. He may not be able to mobilize these old and mature magistrates. If there is no power in his hands, the emperor will not be safe in his seat. Externally, there were barbarians who were enemies of Daqi. Internally there was the embarrassment that the military power was not in the hands of the emperor, and the deposed prince was coveting him. The new emperor was sitting on pins and needles, and he had the idea of taking over the power in the hands of these governors. The new emperor's foundation was too shallow at the beginning, and he was too hasty when he ascended the throne. As of this year's birthday, he has only been on the throne for 2 years. He does not have many talents at his disposal. The only one who is still available is the Prince Ye. The Ye family was loyal to him and had been following him to serve him since he was the king of Yu. They made great contributions to his ascension to the throne. Ye Shiza was gifted with talents, both in literature and in military affairs. He had held a position in the military in his early years, and he actually had an excellent personal relationship with the emperor. The emperor was naturally at ease with Yeshizhe, so he came up with the idea of becoming a general. With the idea of decentralizing power into his hands, he was appointed as a military supervisor, allowed him to have the right to make a decision first and then report back, and he was first released to Yingzhou. Yingzhou is the territory of Deng Zizhu. He has been operating here for many years and has established deep roots. Deng Zizhu has a total of 130,000 soldiers and horses. He is the most powerful among the 6 Zheis house of Deqi. The most important one was Yeshizhe. When he was young and accomplished military exploits, he spent some time under Deng Zizhu. This man had high praise for Prince Ye. If Prince Ye had not been outstanding in status, he would have wanted to adopt Prince Ye as his adopted son. Yeshizhe led the people and entered Yingzhou in a dusty journey. He was wearing a silver brocade robe, holding a red tassel gun in his hand, and riding a white horse. He led a group of people into the city. Lily happened to go out to the yamen to ask Lulu about the whereabouts of Zhang Hongii. When she came back, Lulu was walking beside her. The dust brought by Yeshizhe and his party when they entered the city blew all over their faces. Lulu slapped his face with his sleeve and spit out sand and mud from his mouth, feeling a little angry. These children from the capital all look up to their heads. They don't even regard people as human beings, and they are running rampant on the street like this. Lily also squinted her eyes due to the sand. Her eyes were misty with tears at this time. She was wearing a blue cloth jacket. When Lulu's curses reached her ears, she was still wiping her face with her sleeves, and her heart was filled with hatred for Yeshizhe and his party. "What did you say?" Lulu just made a casual complaint. He said it quietly himself, but he didn't expect that some people with sharp ears in the group heard it. He drank, tightened the reins and reined in the horse, and made a oh-oh sound in his mouth. After scolding, the horse raised its front hooves high, sneezed from its nostrils, and after neighing, the horse was stopped. A soldier in iron armor turned around, pointed at Lulu with the whip in his hand, and drank. One sentence. His move attracted the attention of the galloping cavalry in front. Yeshizhe, who was walking at the front, reined in the horse. His cold and moon-like face showed a hint of impatience. He clamped his legs horse belly, hit the horse this way. "What? Sir, this untouchable is disrespectful to you. He should be whipped 20 times to show respect. Prince Ye came here to seize power." Naturally, he wanted to establish his authority as soon as he came. He had already heard the emperor's order. At this moment, Lulu casually complained and bumped into the muzzle of the gun. The whip soaked into oil in his hand was shining with a shiny luster. This whip would probably break the skin and flesh of the person. 20 lashes if you go down, even if you don't die, you will be crippled. Lulu's expression was blank. He just complained casually. Who would have thought that he would get into such a big trouble by speaking out? His legs shook, and he instinctively blocked Lily behind him, clasping his hands together. "Master Jun, please forgive me. I am not targeting you with my disgusting words. I just said it casually and did not mean anything else. If I have offended Master Jun, I will apologize to Master Ye." Looking at the attitude of Yeshizhe and his entourage, is obviously not someone to be trifled with. If he, a small Yingzhou policeman, is really beaten to death by this group of people, no one would dare to harm these people without having to pay for it. It was not a pity that he died, but there was still an old mother at home, and a sister-in-law entrusted by Zhang Hongii to take care of him. He could not make any mistakes, so Lulu endured the humiliation in his heart. His knees softened, and he knelt down. On the ground, he reached out and slapped himself hard. Amidst the slaps, Yeshizhe was riding on a tall horse, staring at the two of them coldly. Lily lowered her head, and was blocked behind by Lulu. Her face was raised by the hoofs of the horse just passing by. The ash rushed to his face. Now he was rubbing his eyes and couldn't see his face clearly. Yeshiza only glanced at her and thought she was just an ordinary market woman. He didn't take her to heart. Instead, his eyes fell on Lulu. Those eyes were cold, without the slightest warmth. Hurry up and deal with it, business is important. Lulu slapped himself with a lot of force. In order to save his life, he didn't dare to cheat at all, so he slapped himself 7 or 8 times. The corners of his mouth were already cracked, his face was red and swollen, and there was a trace of tears around his mouth. There was bright red blood, but he didn't dare to stop. When he heard Yeshiza said that someone would deal with him quickly, Lulu trembled all over, and subconsciously pressed his hand on the big knife at his waist. He is a policeman, and a pariah is worthless, but no matter how worthless, if these military masters take his life in an understatement, he will definitely not obey. The soldier saw Lulu's actions and sneered. The long whip in his hand was like a living poisonous snake. He raised it and whipped it towards him. A sound broke through the air. The whip was actually going to hit Lulu's face. As the saying goes, if you hit someone, you don't slap him in the face. This soldier just greets people in the face when they arrive, which is really too much. Lulu didn't expect that just a casual word today could cause such a huge disaster. His expression changed, and he was about to jump up, but Lily put down the hand rubbing his eyes and put a hand on his shoulder. There have been too many updates in the past 3 days. I am so tired and drained. I will not work hard tomorrow. Updates are not on time. Everyone suppresses reading during the day. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1024. Lily was not very strong, but she stretched out her hand to hold him down. Lulu was shocked and found that he could not struggle at all. He called out in panic, "Sister-in-law. Master, please spare us too." The whip was whipped towards Lulu's face. Lily raised her head and narrowed her eyes. With one free hand, she accurately grabbed the long whip that looked like a snake head. In hand. At first, the eyes of the few people did not fall on her. They only saw that she was thin and frail, and she was not eye-catching in a green jacket. Unexpectedly, when the soldier pulled out the whip, she actually grabbed the whip tightly, and now everyone was shocked. Startled, Prince Yes' eyes fell on her, and his brows furrowed. He looked back at the sergeant who was cracking the whip, with a look of indifference in his eyes. When the soldier saw him, he became a little angry and said, "Bitch, let go." He whipped once, but didn't even pull the whip back, and his expression changed a little. Lily smiled. She had practiced star training for nearly a year. These soldiers were no match for her with their brute strength, but she didn't want to cause trouble in public to attract others' attention. Her eyes, she looked at Yeshiza and wondered if she had changed due to the 2 years of separation, or if the dust kicked up by the group of people passing by had just hit her face, or if she had changed into an old coat. Instead of the original owner's radiant appearance in Beijing, Prince Ye actually didn't recognize her, and there was no trace of familiarity or doubt in his eyes. Thinking of this, Lily couldn't help but sneer in her heart. The original owner had been engaged to Prince Ye for many years, and the Ye and Zhou families were both from the Marquis house. Although the two of them did not interact with each other in private, so as not to lose the reputation of private exchanges, the eldest princess in Beijing once held a banquet, and Zhou Beihe and Yeshiza had met, and it was not just this time, otherwise Zhou Beihe would have met Yeshiza once. How could Lily recognize Yeshiza, who was galloping past on horseback later in the plot? But now he doesn't even recognize the original owner. Fortunately, the original owner is still thinking about returning to Kyoto and renewing her unfinished relationship. "Master, please be merciful. This uncle of mine has spoken without restraint. Now he has his own mouth. He was disrespectful to several military masters. If he turns around and reports it to the elders in the family, he will definitely make him kneel in front of the ancestral tablet to repent. Lily finished, he slowly released the whip in his hand. This group of people stayed for as long as they could. At this time, more and more people gathered around the roadside. Just now a group of people rushed into the city. Many vendors and pedestrians who were walking around hurriedly got out of the way, and some cursed, but none of them were unlucky enough to be targeted like Lulu. At this time, they saw that a weak woman, Lulu, had already knelt down and confessed. These people were still unwilling to let go. Many people in the market also knew Lulu and knew the power of his sworn brothers. Lulu and this group of people have the same bad temper. Although Lulu has never caused any trouble after the other people joined the army, it's fine that everyone doesn't like them. But compared with these outsiders, Yingzhou City, the people still instinctively stood on Lulu's side, and they all started talking. They are all members of the public family and eat the same bowl of Tianjia rice. Since they have all admitted their crimes, it is better for the military masters to just forget it. When the soldier saw Lily let go, he took back the whip in his hand. Yeshai's face looked even colder at this time, and he frowned. Everyone around him was talking. He had just entered the city and wanted to make a show of his power, but he didn't expect that when he pulled out the whip, he didn't hit anyone. Instead, he was hit by someone. The woman caught him. The soldier couldn't get off the stage after hearing the words of the people around him. Seeing that Yeshai's eyes were full of impatience, he suddenly became angry and raised the whip in his hand. Shut up. There are unscrupulous people in the poor mountains and rivers. The court is doing things, so you can't talk too much. There was murderous intent in his eyes. If he had just been whipped 6 to 20 times like he said, maybe he would just let it go after saying this. Now that he has lost face and no one has been hit, what he already wants is the lives of Lulu and Lily. The whip is like a poisonous snake. It opens its teeth and claws and swipes at Lily, obviously to repay her for making a fool of herself by pulling the whip just now. Revenge. It would be fine if the whip hit herself, but if it hit Lily, not to mention whether she could hold it as a woman, even if she did, her brother clearly handed a good daughter-in-law into his hands when he left. When they came back and found someone injured, I'm afraid the brotherhood would be broken. They were the ones who instigated Zhang Hong'ai to join the army. Before Zhang Hong'ai left, he said that if Lily lost a hair, she would come back to settle the account with him. Lulu put his hand on the knife in a panic, not caring that this group of people was not easy to offend. Men are full of blood, even if it is a rabbit that bites when it is in a hurry, this group of people will not give in. He swallows his anger and presses on step by step, which really makes him helpless. He jumped up in desperation and shouted, "Dare you!" Before he could take out the knife he carried with him and slash it on the soldier's riding whip, Prince Ye had already seen his move, raised his eyebrows, and showed a sharp look in his eyes. He turned the red tassel gun in his hand and was about to. He picked it up towards him, and when the whip came back in front of Lily, there was a snap sound, and she reached out and grabbed it again. This time Lily did not let the soldier go so easily. The matter could never happen again. She had already apologized like this, but the group of people still pressed forward step by step. When the group entered the city just now, Luliuliu was not the only one who cursed. The folk customs in Yingzhou are fierce. Whoever opened his mouth just now didn't curse more harshly than Lulu. But these people picked on the weak and really got into trouble with them. Lily sneered, and the soldier blushed. He stretched out his hand to pull the whip back from Lily's hand, but he couldn't pull the whip back with all his strength. He cursed, and Lily narrowed her eyes. "Master Jun, it's time to stop. You and your group are running rampant into the city. You can easily hurt people. Life is not easy for everyone these days." As soon as she finished speaking, Prince Ye sneered beside him, and finally became impatient. "Don't waste time." His voice was low, his handsome face was covered with frost, and his straight and beautiful eyebrows he has a naturally noble complexion and pursed lips. As soon as he finished speaking, others could not figure out what kind of character he was, but the few people accompanying him knew that he was already a little dissatisfied with the fact that they had stayed here for a period of time. The soldier's eyelids twitched, and he stretched out his hand to tighten his whip, trying to drag Lily in front of him. At the same time, he reached out to touch the knife at his waist. Seeing his movement, Lily couldn't bear it anymore. She tightened her grip on the whip and shook it hard. A soft force was spat out from her palm, and the whip body, which had been stretched straight due to the strength of the two of them, was shaken out of the shape of waves. The soldiers on the horse did not expect that her strength would be so strong, and they were shocked and turned pale. He tried his best to stabilize his body, but it was too late. His body was tilted off the horse by the force. If he still held onto the whip, he would probably be dragged to the ground. Fortunately, he stepped on the stirrups to stabilize his figure, but as soon as he was about to fall, the soldier instinctively let go of his hand and subconsciously hugged the horse's neck tightly. But as a result, the horse was frightened and began to move its hooves uneasily. He tried his best to climb onto the horse's back, cursing in his mouth, and said in an unclean manner, "Thousands of people will ride on you, and thousands of people will touch you. I will turn around and throw you into the red tent." Before he could finish his words, Lily would seize the opportunity. The whip that arrived was in his hand. When he heard these words, he raised the whip and hit the horse's butt with a snap sound. "Thank you, Master June, for your compliment. In this case, I will also give you a ride, my little wife. I wish you the best. You all have a bright future." When the whip hit the horse's butt, the horse was frightened. The pain caused it to raise its front hooves and neigh. It shook its hooves regardless and started to go crazy. As soon as this horse went crazy, the other horses started to go crazy. Yeshiza was originally ready to take action, but he didn't expect such a change. He was so surprised that he didn't want to take action against her again, and he didn't dare to do what he did just now. Holding the reins with one hand, he held the reins tightly with both hands. However, one horse went crazy and couldn't stop it. A group of horses began to run wildly in the busy city. Yingzhou really has a lot of people. Yeshiza's handsome and cold face showed a look of embarrassment for the first time. He had never put Lily in his eyes before, but now he did not expect to see a little peasant woman he met here in Yingzhou. Was able to force him to look embarrassed before he even made a move. He instinctively turned his head to look at Lily. At this time, the little woman stretched out her hand to hit the horse, and then threw the long whip in her hand to the ground. Maybe it was because of the cold. Her hands were already wrapped in her sleeves. She felt his gaze at this moment and raised her head to look at him. She curled up her lips and sneered. Only then did Yeshiza realize that this woman who looked inconspicuous at first was quite good looking. Even like I have seen it somewhere. There seemed to be an impression of that face in my mind, but I tried to think of it, but couldn't remember it. The horses were still going crazy, and the group of people were running rampant. Wherever they went, pedestrians dodged and cursed. The soldier who was originally preparing to attack Lulu was in the worst situation at this time. After the horse went crazy, he couldn't hold the horse's neck tightly at all, so he could only hold the horse's hair tightly, but this made the horse suffer even more pain, and he would have been killed long ago. He shook it off, his feet were still locked in the pedals, and he was hanging limply on the horse's back. When everyone ran into a remote alley in Yingzhou and finally controlled the horse, the prince then discovered that the soldier's legs were broken, and he fainted from the pain. Yeshiza was born into a wealthy family and entered the army with astonishing talent. He had never suffered such a big loss in his life. When he entered the city, he failed to establish himself and was manipulated by others. A lot of cold energy emanated from his body. The expression made people tremble with chills, and everyone was gnashing their teeth, but he thought about where he must have seen that girl's face. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1025. At this time, on the other side, Lily drove the group of people away, turned around and pulled Lulu up. His legs were still a little weak, obviously because of what happened just now. He was scared, and he stared in disbelief. Seeing Lily, he didn't expect that Lily would behave so unexpectedly today. Originally, a year ago, when he saw Lily chasing his second brother with a poker, Lulu thought that Zhang Heze, a reckless man, had finally found a shrew who matched him. Unexpectedly, what surprised him now was that Lily could even pull off the whip. Just by hearing the sound of the whip breaking through the air, I knew that the military master's hand was quite strong, but with such a whip, Lily could reach out to stop it, and even pull the whip from his hand. If at first Lulu only respected this sister-in-law because of Zhang Hong'ai, now he really admires Bei. "Are you okay?" Lily asked him, and he shook his head respectfully. He originally wanted to smile, but instead it affected the wound he had pulled out before. As soon as his cheek muscles moved, he gasped. A cool voice came, "Sister-in-law. Go back first, pack some dry food, and then leave. You can't stay in Yingzhou any longer. Go to Jiaokang to join your brothers. Your brothers are all in Jiaokang. I will take care of you. These people are not easy to mess with. But if you were in the army, based on Zhang Hong'ai's character, he would protect your life." Lily interrupted him before he could finish. Yeshiza was not someone to be trifled with, and had a cold and ruthless personality. From the very beginning, Zhou Bei became engaged to him. But something happened to the Zhou family, and he could see how heartless and unjust this person was without even raising his hand. Although the Zhou family was originally a prince-sealing party, Zhou's father had only mediocre talents and did not hold an important position in the court. Even if he was a prince-sealing party, how many people could possibly help the prince? The Zhou family is not a direct descendant of the prince. It is said that there is a personal relationship between Prince Ye and the new emperor. If he had been willing to say a few nice words, the Zhou family would have been in bad luck again. It's impossible for it to end up like this. But he didn't care about the friendship between the unmarried couple at all. Watching something happen to the Zhou family, even though under the circumstances, he helped out of love, and no one could blame him if he didn't. You can see this person's character from this. Lulu felt uneasy when he heard this. Take a breath. He grinned, then touched his face, which was red, swollen, and bruised, and hesitated. So vicious. Could he still be able to eat people? Anyway, just listen to me. Lulu finally gave her a year's worth of rice. Hadao, who usually brought her firewood and water, took care of her, and she took care of Lulu's mother, which was considered as repaying his favor. Last time Zhang Hong'ai came back and said that Deng Zhihu wanted to adopt him as his adopted son. I heard from Lulu before that Zhang Hong'ai was indeed under the command of Deng Zhihu. Lulu had offended Yeshiza, but if there is such a relationship, even if he eats it was a bit painful, but at least my life could be saved. She urged Lulu to leave quickly, then took out a bag of silver from her arms and threw it at him. Your eldest brother gave it to me when he came back last time. Use it to buy horses in exchange for some food and water. Let's go. Lulu was stunned for a moment, touching the silver, with indescribable emotion in his eyes. He gritted his teeth, nodded, endured the pain, and cursed. These sons of bitches have to force me to join the army. Sister-in-law, I will leave my mother to you. Lily's action of pulling the whip just now clearly shows that she is not a weak woman. I leave my mother to her care. Luluya was relieved, not to mention that he had no choice but to worry now. Judging from Lily's appearance, she seemed to know the noble man. If she didn't leave, she might bring trouble to her mother at home. The man didn't shed tears easily. He wiped the blood on his face, turned around and ran away. Lily has also been to the Lu family's place this year. Lu Liu's wife, Lu Kuashi, is already in her early 40s, but she looks much older than her actual age. Lily came to her house and asked her to move when she left home with her. Lu Guo was still confused. It's just that Mrs. Lu Guo knew Lily and understood that she was the daughter-in-law of her son's sworn brother. Zhang Hongii entrusted her to his son to take care of her before he left. When she saw Lily coming to see her, she didn't know what happened, so she went there without having time to ask. Pack some clothes. There was nothing valuable in the house, only a small jar of copper coins was left. Lu Guo took the jar and left with Lily. I originally thought that Lulu would have escaped this time, but unexpectedly at midnight, someone came to the house and knocked on the door, saying that something had happened to Lulu. Hearing this, Mrs. Lu Guo couldn't help herself at that time. She had only one son and had not yet carried on the family line. When Lulu said that he was going to the battlefield, he couldn't worry about her. Secondly, Mrs. Lu Guo was also afraid of this only son. Something went wrong, so they refused to allow him to go. They only hoped that he would work in the palace for a few years and find a wife for himself so that he could have grandchildren. No one expected that everything would turn into disaster. Come on, now that people are sitting at home, disaster has come to their doorsteps. Lily pinched her, and she woke up leisurely. The two women returned to Lu's house in a panic. Lu Liu's body was swollen with blood and he stopped on a door panel in the house. His face had been beaten to pieces, like the pulp of a broken melon, and one of his eyes had been smashed and fell out. He was still breathing heavily. When he heard someone coming in, he let out a huo-huo in his throat. The voice, after a long while, shouted with difficulty. "Mother, mother." When Mrs. Lu Guo saw him, she almost couldn't recognize him. Her legs went weak. If Lily hadn't pulled her behind her, she would have sat down on the spot. She stumbled and was pulled forward by Lily, and she didn't dare to touch her son. There was no intact skin on Lu Liu's body, and there were whip marks in some places. Lily pursed her lips, wondering who did it. Sister-in-law, sister-in-law, take care of my mother." He gasped in pain, still worried about his only mother. Today Lily asked him to leave quickly, but he had never been separated from his mother since he was a child. He always felt that he had to tell her before leaving, so he went out of the city and thought something was wrong and came back. He had originally made up his mind to bid farewell to his mother, join a few brothers, and come back with great success, marry his wife a daughter-in-law she likes, and then expand the Lu family. He had pretty good thoughts when he came back, but he didn't expect that when he came back, he didn't see my mother, but instead he saw a few soldiers who looked like wolves and tigers. These people tied him up and left without saying a word. Although Lulu struggled desperately, he was unable to fight against the four hands with his fists. When he was beaten to death and taken away, those people tied him into the dungeon of the county government office. At that time, he knew, "I'm afraid I won't survive." It's a pity that he didn't listen to Lily's words. He couldn't avenge this revenge. As soon as Lulu spoke, the wounds on his body that had not yet clotted continued to bleed out. The neighbors all around looked at this and muttered something. Guess whether Lulu offended someone. "Where's the doctor? Where's the doctor?" Mrs. Lu Guo was about to collapse. Someone had already called for the doctor. However, it was midnight and the doctor was slow to arrive. Lulu was obviously in trouble and was breathing a lot. He had little air intake, but his only bloody eye was still open, and he took a deep breath and refused to let it go, obviously feeling very unwilling to do so. Lily endured the feelings in her heart and whispered, "If I can't avenge this revenge, let me tell you, brother, I know who the enemy is." He grinned, and with this movement, a large stream of blood spurted out from the corner of his mouth, spraying all over Lu Kuashi, who was holding him. Lu Kuashi let out a heartbreaking cry, and Lu Liu's head tilted and died. When something happened to him, Lily arranged for him to be buried. She could guess the specific reason without asking. She had offended Yeshiza, and Lulu was wearing the clothes of a police officer at the time. It was not difficult to find out his identity. It would be fine if he ran away, and when he came back, he would definitely be caught and beaten. With Lulu's death, no one will come to trouble the two women anymore. It's a pity that Luguo lost her husband early in life, and now her only single seedling is so inexplicably gone. How can she bear this blow and hold on to her body to handle the funeral? After that, he also became discouraged. After Lily finished the funeral and wanted to check the whereabouts of Prince Ye, she found out that he had led people to Jiaokang early in the morning. When Zhang Hong'ai came back after the new year, he climbed over the wall and entered the house as usual. When he knocked on the door, Lily had already gone to bed. As soon as he got up and opened the door, he took him into his arms and held her tightly. "Daughter-in-law, you miss me so much." He smelled of Mago leather goods, mixed with sweat and rust, and seemed to be vaguely mixed with a trace of blood. The smell was not good. "Lily," he pushed him and asked. "Why did you come back suddenly? The war is over." "I came back after asking for grace from my adoptive father. He has now made many military exploits and is already the adopted son that Deng Zhihu values very much." Deng Zhihu knew people well and was good at utilizing them, while Zhang Hong'ai was unparalleled in strength. Although he did not know how to fight, he did have a unique talent in war. He was not afraid of death. Whenever he went into battle, he had the courage to be invincible. Now rising again and again, my adoptive father has told me that if I go back this time and make another contribution, he will appoint me as the history of the horse army. From now on, your man will also be a serious general of the imperial court. Lily didn't understand what generals were like on this battlefield, but she could see that he was talking so happily that he always came back in the middle of the night, disturbing people's peace. Lily yawned and asked him, "Have you eaten yet?" When she came back, she didn't ask how much glory she had received. When Zhang Hong'ai couldn't wait to share it with her, she always asked about trivial things like this. But Zhang Hong'ai felt comforted when he heard it. He shook his head, his eyes soft. "Daughter-in-law, I go fetch water, and I'll light the fire first." He hadn't been home for several months, but when he came back he was surrounded by orders. Zhang Hong'ai grinned, responded, and was about to touch the bucket. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1026. But when Zhang Hong'ai opened the water tank, he found that there was not much water in it. He remembered that when he came back last time, the tank was still half full. At that time, he still trusted him to entrust Lulu to take care of his wife and children. Unexpectedly, Lulu would dare to do this in just a few days. Thinking of this, Zhang Hong'ai threw the lid away with a sullen face, picked up the pole on the wall and left without even taking the bucket, looking as if he was going to find someone to settle the score with. In the middle of the night, Lily saw his behavior and asked him, "What are you doing?" He remained silent and tilted his head to look at the rice vat. There was some rice in the vat, but not much. Zhang Hong'ai clenched his fists and cursed. "That bitch, Lulu, tricked me into joining the army and said he would take care of you, but now it's only been a few days and I haven't picked up enough water or rice to buy anything. Do you dare to neglect you because I'm not at home? I have become a sworn brother with him. I didn't expect this bitch of his to be so bold. I have to break his legs in front of his mother today." Zhang Hong'ai was anxious and angry at this time. If Lu was the one who joined the army that day 6, if Lulu entrusted his mother to him, Zhang Hong'ai would naturally serve him as his own mother. He originally thought that Lulu would be like him, but he didn't expect to see that there was no rice or water at home. Naturally, he was anxious. He was originally a quick-tempered person, but more than a year of life in the army had made him even more aggressive. Now he was about to rush out the door when he found something was wrong. When Lily heard what he said, her original movement to stand up was sudden. Sat down. What's wrong, Zhang Hong? I felt something was wrong and turned around to look. Seeing Lily sitting in front of the stove, her brows slightly furrowed, her face expressionless and silent, she immediately panicked. Did someone bully you? When I wanted to join the army, it was because I wanted to have a bright future. Now I have a bright future, but I originally wanted this kind of future for the sake of my family, my brothers, and my wife. If Zhang Hongyi had to say it himself, he would rather stay here. This place is Yingzhou. Being a useless butcher for the rest of his life. I originally went out to pursue my future. Now everything is going well, which is not bad. There is someone to take care of his wife at home, and he has planned how many years he will work. Save some money. Then he told Deng Zhihu that he was going to retire and return to his hometown. Come back and have a baby. But now Lily's expression made Zhang Hongyi feel that something was wrong. He felt like a little rabbit in his heart and asked uneasily, "What's wrong?" "You probably can't break his legs in front of his mother." Lily endured her feelings and saw Zhang Hongyi's mouth wide open when he heard her words, looking confused, and sighed, "Lulu and his mother is gone." He also smiled stupidly, he. "What do you mean it's gone? The mother and son are dead. I have arranged the funeral. I just don't know where you are and I can't notify you." Lily took a handful of firewood and stuffed it into the stove. When Zhang Hongyi heard this, he felt that it was early spring in January or February. The weather was suddenly as cold as if we were in the cold winter of December. A chill shot up from the soles of his feet. He was a big man. No matter how cold he was in the past, he had never been like this before. His body began to sway slightly. Goosebumps appeared layer by layer on his body. His hand used to be able to hold down a fat pig, and he could chop off a barbarian's head with a single blow when carrying a pair of axes on the battlefield, but now he couldn't hold the light hook of the pole. The blood all over his body flowed rapidly, making him feel cold all over. The thing in his hand fell to the ground with a clang, hitting the toes of his black-soled cloth shoes. He opened his mouth and couldn't shout. With the word pain, it seemed that the whole person was unconscious. Who the hum? His voice was trembling, he couldn't say a complete sentence, and his whole body was tense. The rice in the pot is boiling, steaming, there is a fire in the room, the aroma of rice is mixed with the heat of firewood, it should be warm as spring and relaxing, but at this time Zhang Hongyi seems to be in the torrent. He trembled his lips and couldn't utter a complete sentence. His heart was empty and his hands were shaking violently. Lily sighed silently, stuffed the firewood into the stove, and then clapped her hands. She stood up and walked towards Zhang Hongyi, reaching out to pull him. He held her tightly like a drowning person grabbing a life-saving straw. In the past, no matter how cold it was, his palms were always dry and warm, but now they were cold and hard, like stone. He held Lily a little too hard, causing some pain. Lily let him hold on tightly, and wrapped her other hand around his waist, patting her gently like coaxing a child. There is always something to do with the eldest son of the family of Nanping Marquis. Don't worry. You can't avenge yourself now. You will be able to avenge yourself one day. As you said, you are still young, and Nanping Marquis was not born. It's Nanping Hao. As soon as she told what happened that day, Zhang Hongyi trembled all over and held her tightly in his arms. Drops of water fell on her head and sank into the root of her hair, like a rain shower. As if, he was silent and didn't even want her to see his tearful side, so Lily pretended not to know. His suppressed sadness is far more heart-wrenching than loud wailing. Lily cooked rice that night, but Zhang Hongyi couldn't eat anything. The two sat for a long time. The next day, instead of leaving before dawn like last time, he went to get some wine. Everyone in the city knew about Zhang Hongyi's return, and also knew about his sworn brother Lulu. Seeing his gloomy face, no one dared to breathe. Lulu's mother and son were buried on a slope outside the city. Zhang Hongyi sat in front of the simple grave, laid out the incense candles, paper money, and patted the seal of the wine jar. Good brother, I almost misunderstood you. Go with peace of mind. One day, your eldest brother will avenge this revenge on you even at the risk of his life. I will inherit the incense of the Lu family for you. From now on, my son will be your son. Just like you used to respect your sister-in-law as your mother. He had already been sad last night, and his expression was so calm that it made people's hearts tremble. His eyes were red, and for the first time, his honest face showed a fierce and ruthless look. He picked up the wine jar and took a big sip. Then his cheek muscles twitched and he smashed the wine jar in front of the grave. With a bang, the jar broke into pieces, and the wine spilled all over the grave. It was also stained on his clothes and trousers. Zhang Hongyi narrowed his eyes. I didn't have much time to drink with you before. Who would have thought that you, a short-lived piece of shit, wouldn't wait for my brother to come back and drink with you? After he said it, his voice choked up, and he took a deep breath, holding back. Living. Seeing this scene, Lily walked far away. Zhang Hongyi stayed for nearly half an hour before getting up and walking towards Lily. The weather in Yingzhou in February was still a bit cold. It rained continuously in the morning. Lily was wearing a green jacket. There was a lot of white drizzle on her head and body. Her face was a little blue from the cold and her lips were missing color. There was a look of love in Zhang Hongyi's eyes. He reached out and touched Lily's head with a gentle tone. Are you cold? He seemed to have changed a bit from before. He was still smiling when he came back last night. After everything happened this time, he seemed to have matured a lot overnight. Lulu and others, I and others, have been together since we were young. We got to know each other while wearing crotchless pants, and they hung out together all day long. He was beaten by his mother several times because of this. His mother used to say that he was not doing his job properly, and he finally found a job in a government office, but he ended up like this with us every day. The local gangsters hang out together, and every time they see us, his mother always chases us with a stick and beats us, saying that we have taught her old man's son a bad way. He seemed to be in a good conversation today, with a smile on his face when he spoke. He was probably recalling past scenes, and his eyes were slightly bright. Lily remained silent and listened quietly with her lips pursed as he recalled the past. Her tenderness made Zhang Hongyi's heart seem to be filled with ripples on the lake. He always wanted to do something. Holding her hand was not enough, and hugging her tightly seemed to lack some warmth. He endured it again and again. There is a bit of ferocity in the corners of the eyes and eyebrows. Daughter-in-law, whether you admit to marrying me or not, this time you will bury Lulu as his sister-in-law and pay his last respects to his mother. In the eyes of my surname Zhang, you are already mine. I will wait for you later. When I have free time, I will ask my adoptive father to make the decision and arrange the marriage for us and settle the matter. After hearing what he said, Lily tilted her head and looked at him. His eyes did not dodge, his face was not red, he was not out of breath, and he was calm. Staring at her, his eyes were full of determination. You can't escape, even if you don't want to. My surname Zhang has the reputation of robbing civilian women, and you are mine too. When he said this, he was still smiling, and his face that used to look fierce, there seemed to be something extra at this time, an indescribable smell. He has hidden Lulu's death in his heart. If he doesn't mention it now, it doesn't mean he has forgotten it. The deeper he hides it, the more vicious he will be when he breaks out in the future. As for the wedding, Lily frowned and said nothing. He was not prepared to wait for Lily's answer. He took her and walked towards home. This time, he no longer said anything about buying anything. It was time to buy floral shoes and satin jewelry. Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The air was full of damp and cold smell. Zhang Hongyi stayed at home for 2 days this time. Every day he would buy jars of wine and sit on Liliu's tomb for a long time. When he came back, he would fill the water jar and buy a large jar of rice. Now he can no longer control whether he enters the battlefield or not. He wants to avenge Lulu. The heroic path that Ye mentioned at the beginning was not that easy to follow. It was not until 2 days later that Deng Zhihu sent soldiers to invite him that he left. After leaving for half a year, the prince rebelled, and at the same time, the Pan family in Huainan also rebelled. 2 years after the new emperor came to the throne, his foundation was too weak. In the face of this rebellion, he had no choice but to borrow troops from several other prefectures. At this critical moment, Deng Zhihu borrowed 40,000 troops from the imperial court and appointed his adopted son Zhang Hongyi as the capital. Knowing the military envoy, he will lead the troops north to help the new emperor and eliminate the remnants of the deposed prince. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1027. Zhang Hongyi was originally worried about his wife at home, not to mention that this time the emperor promised him wealth and promised that if he made great achievements this time, he would be recommended by Deng Zhihu to be appointed as the prefect of Zhangzhou and have the right to recruit soldiers by himself. Although he did not explicitly promote Zhang Hongyi to the post of magistrate, under such circumstances, the emperor just did not pierce the window paper, fearing that one more magistrate would make the situation even more chaotic in the Qi dynasty. In normal times, the emperor would definitely not dare to do this, but now he was forced to have no choice but to make his promise first. Deng Zhihu was kind to Zhang Hongyi and had always been very fond of his talent, so he lent him 40,000 troops and promised that if he succeeded, he would only need to pay back 20,000, and the remaining 20,000 troops would be given to him. This trip to the north was the real road to wealth. Zhang Hongyi was ready to go north to settle the royal affairs, so he immediately took Lily to Zhangzhou. Therefore, before setting off, he also borrowed people from Deng Zhihu to take Lily to the capital. This incident caused a sensation throughout Yingzhou. Who would have expected that that scoundrel from the market would experience such a huge fortune after going to the battlefield? At the entrance of near Beihutong, Zhou Dalin heard that Zhang Hongyi had been promoted to Zhangzhou Prefecture, and he was trembling with excitement. Zhang Hongyi, is this Zhang Hongyi? He asked a series of questions, and Sister Zhou was also a little unsure. I said he is a pig butcher. I don't know if it's the same person. It should be, it should be. The person who came back last time said he was a pig butcher. Zhou Dalin clasped his hands together and kept bending down to nod. Blessed by our ancestors, my parents are alive in heaven. I didn't expect that the Zhou family would be rich this time. We should continue to tidy up, and when he has made great achievements, maybe the emperor will remember us and take us back. Sister-in-law Zhou didn't say anything. When Zhou Dalin saw Zhang Hongyi that day, he drove him away without putting on a good face. He also said that Beihe was remarried to Zhang Hongyi that day and should commit suicide for Yeshiza. The man named Zhang looks like he has a bad temper. I'm afraid it may not be what my husband said. I can think of them for Lily's sake. But looking at the happy look on her husband's face, I remembered that he used to be the prince of the marquis, but now he is living in this small courtyard, and his food and clothing expenses are not as good as before. Even because of his thin stature. I don't even dare to open the door on weekdays. I was afraid of being harassed by local gangsters, so I stayed at home all day long. Even though Mrs. Zhou disagreed in her heart, seeing her husband full of hope, she didn't dare to say anything. In fact, she hoped in her heart that Lily could take care of her old relationship, even if it wasn't for Zhou Dalin's sake, but for her former parents-in-law's sake, she would think of them and share the wealth with them, although she knew that hope was slim. She was fed up with this kind of life. The intrusion of the local gangsters around her made their whole family frightened. She was originally a girl from an official family, and she really couldn't stand this kind of life anymore. At this time, Bei and Zhang Hongyi separated and were picked up on their way to Beijing. In the plot, Zhou Bei dreamed of going back, but at that time, she could not take a step back to the imperial city until her death. Now by chance, when Bei came to fulfill her wish, her long-cherished wish came true. Unfortunately, the person who fulfilled her dream was none other than Butcher Zhang, whom Lily Zhou had always looked down upon in the plot. The surrounding scenery kept changing. The army that brought Lily into the capital was moving in a hurry. Zhang Hongyi's army had even begun to transport grain and grass to the capital a few days ago. The remaining tribes of the deposed prince had already surrounded the capital. There are not many troops in Beijing. It is best for them to rush into the city with Zhang Hongyi when he arrives. No matter what, they cannot be too late, otherwise they will most likely be in danger if they encounter the remaining old prince-sealing troops. That day, the Zhou clan was driven out of the capital in a state of embarrassment. Who would have thought that a few years later, Lily would be able to ride back in a carriage again one day? She was getting closer and closer to the capital, and the person escorting her even came to tell her that it was only one day away from the capital at most. The group of people couldn't help but look relieved on their faces. The closer we get to the capital, the more we can feel something is wrong. People in some villages along the way must have sensed something is wrong and have already fled. 10 rooms are empty. Occasionally, you can see a few corpses in military uniforms on the road. It's hot. Some of the sky is rotten and exudes a stench. If you look carefully, you can still see the traces of the army passing by, and the wheel marks left behind are very obvious. Zhang Hongyi and his party should have arrived first. The journey was bumpy, and sometimes the group didn't even dare to find accommodation in an inn. Now they finally arrived. Once they entered Beijing, there would be hot water, delicious food, and even beautiful girls. Everyone didn't rest at night, trying to get to the base of the imperial city in one go. In the morning, when the sky was just getting dark, they could see the towering city gate shrouded in the mist from far across the mountain road. The soldiers refreshed their spirits and rode to the lily carriage. "Girl, we're almost here." Although Zhang Hongyi has worshipped Deng Zhihu as his adoptive father, and everyone knows that he will have a bright future after his meritorious service, he and Lily have not yet officially married. In addition, although Zhang Hongyi now holds military power, but after all, Lily had not been officially consecrated by the imperial court, so the leading general only called her a girl. It's already now, and we haven't encountered the rebels yet. Maybe your excellency has wiped out all the remaining prince sealings in one fell swoop. When the soldier spoke, even though Lily was sitting in the carriage and couldn't see his face, the tone in his tone she could hear the excitement, and she smiled, but soon she felt something was not right. The carriage wheels were still rolling on the ground, but Lily could vaguely feel the slight vibration in the ground. She has practiced star training for 2 years, and her 5 senses are much more sensitive than others. This is a small group of people coming, and there must be something wrapped on the horse's hooves, so the movement is very small, and they must be approaching. She felt it. Something's not quite right. Please listen. Lily raised the car curtains and frowned at the people outside. The soldiers outside didn't take it seriously at first, just thinking she was just having random thoughts, and smiled. "Young lady, you are thinking too much. Now we are getting closer to the capital. Your Excellency leads the army first, and they are already at the feet of the emperor. The men and horses of the deposed prince are no match for you. Yes, I'm afraid the girl hasn't seen the adults for a long time, so she misses him." The group of people were getting closer and closer. Lily shook her head. The wheels of the carriage were still rolling on the ground, making a loud noise, which reduced everyone's hearing to a certain extent. Lily had a serious look on her face, but the soldier was still smiling at first. Seeing that something wasn't right about her expression, he thought for a moment and clamped his legs between the horse's belly, then shouted stop. No one knew what was going on, and the convoy slowly stopped. The soldier jumped off his horse and put his ears to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the team, who did not know whether it was an enemy or a friend, got closer. Although the soldier is not as good as Lily in martial arts, he is quite experienced in the battlefield for many years. When he heard the sound of horse hooves, his expressions changed. The opponent was getting closer and closer. At this time, the group wanted to hide, but we were not far away from the capital, but the surrounding area was deserted. Where could we hide? There were such a large group of people, and they also brought a woman with them. They couldn't run fast. The soldier gritted his teeth and was undecided. The group finally arrived. There were about 20 people in the group, all dressed in black and covering their faces. The team rushed over on fast horses. Under the misty sky, the people in front raised their hand crossbows, and a whoosh sound broke through the air. They were clearly here to kill people and silence them. The soldiers had not had time to report their general's identity. Diming, the horse beneath him was hit by an arrow in its eye and began to go crazy. The team started killing without saying a word as soon as they arrived. The team protecting Behi entering the capital was caught off guard by the breakthrough at first, but they quickly came to their senses and firmly protected Behi in the center. These people he came prepared, and used a lightweight, compact and extremely lethal crossbow that is only available in the army. He also caught everyone off guard. The crossbow was smeared with poison, and soon less than half of the people here were killed or injured. Lily thought when I got out of the carriage, I was blocked by people outside. Hearing the screams outside, she kicked the carriage to pieces. The soldiers outside did not expect her strength to be so strong. They were surprised. At the same time, Lily picked up a cracked carriage board and used all her strength. Then he hit the group of men in black who were firing crossbows. The advantage of the hand crossbow is that it is light and can kill people invisible, but in terms of penetrating power, it is much worse than the bow. What's more, at such a close range, it is good enough to pierce human flesh at most. Lily threw the carriage plank over at this moment, and the crossbow could not penetrate it, and the carriage plank was hit by raindrops of arrows. But without losing momentum, flew directly towards the group of men in black. That group of people killed everyone they saw. Who would have expected Lily to react so quickly? What's more, they didn't expect the manpower in the carriage to be so powerful. When they reacted and wanted to hide, they were on the horse with the hand holding the crossbow is impossible to dodge even if you want to. There was a muffled sound, and Lily jumped out of the carriage and snorted, "Catch them." At first, this group of people suddenly came in, and everyone couldn't react, so they could only defend passively, killing many people. Now Lily's actions restored everyone's disadvantage. Several people were stunned for a moment, and the angry group came to their senses. He patted the horse and rushed forward. I originally thought that this group of men in black would run away when they saw what was going on. Unexpectedly, these people did not run away. Instead, after the panic, they quickly stabilized their position. When they saw a group of people rushing over, they began to take out weapons. The man in black at the head took out a silver gun. In the foggy weather in the early morning, the silver gun flashed with a cold light, as if he had found the target. He rushed towards Lily. Anyone who stopped him along the way was killed by him. One shot hit the horse. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1028. I don't know the origin of this man in black with his face covered and carrying a silver gun. He actually has some skills in martial arts, and his horsemanship is also good. There are almost no enemies under the gun. The most important thing is that I don't know who sent this group of people. They were like dead warriors. They opened the way for the man in black with the gun and cooperated extremely well. They rushed over like a broken bamboo. Soon, it was like a sharp knife, breaking through the defending people and approaching Lily. Protector. The face of the soldier leading the team changed a little when he saw this scene. This time he was entrusted by Zhang Hongii and received orders from Deng Zhihu to escort Lily north. He saw that he was now almost at the foot of the imperial city. The whole journey was uneventful. If he was about to meet Zhang Hongyi's people, but Lily had a problem here. How could he have the face to meet Zhang Hongyi, and what face would he have to go back to Yingzhou to see Deng Zhihu? Before the soldier finished shouting the anxious words, Lily saw the group of people and the shiny silver gun. She suddenly raised the corner of her mouth and slapped the soldier away with a palm. Before he finished speaking, he was staggered by Lily. If his feet were not still locked in the stirrups, he would have been knocked off the horse. However, although he did not fall, his body swayed. Hurriedly tightened the reins and made a soothing sound to the horse, and finally managed to stabilize his body. Girl. The soldier really didn't understand why Lily pushed him. He was a little surprised when he saw Lily jump up from the broken carriage. She was like a light leaf and jumped on his horse first. The horse was frightened. She sneezed uneasily, and before she could swing her hooves around, Lily had already jumped out. The man in black holding the silver gun saw her actions, and his misty eyes showed a bit of coldness. The spear that was originally picked towards the side turned around, and the red tassel spread in the air, bringing with it a sharp sound of wind, as it was about to be drawn to the other side. Lily stretched out her hand, obviously trying to grab his silver gun. Seeking death, the man in black discovered her intention and couldn't help but spit out two words. He was about to speak, but the next moment the spear swept out failed to hit anyone, and Lily grabbed a ray of red tassel and smoothly dragged the tip of the gun in his direction. The man in black didn't take it seriously at first. His arm strength was already strong, and coupled with the original weight of the silver spear, the force increased several times when it was swept out. Even if a good general on the battlefield fought with him, he might not be able to lose. At this moment, Lily wanted to grab his spear with her bare hands. He sneered twice, expecting to wait until Lily became unsteady and was thrown off the carriage by his own strength. But she didn't expect that the spearhead that was swept out was suddenly pulled by her, as if it was suddenly swept onto the iron wool, and could no longer move. As she pulled, the long spearhead was pulled over by her, and she smoothly pulled the silver holding the gun. Before the man in black could react, Lily grasped the silver gun firmly and jumped towards his horse. As a woman, she didn't know where she could get such strength. The man in black held onto the silver gun tightly. The other end of the gun was held in her palm. The man in black struggled to free himself several times. As she jumped onto her horse, the man in black holding the other side of the silver gun seemed to be sitting on a seesaw. Similar. Lily was suddenly forced to retreat, if she wanted to alleviate the situation. Unless he removes the spear in his hand. But the man in black was obviously very arrogant and had no intention of giving up resistance. The next moment he felt a sharp pain coming from his feet locked in the stirrups. He was not as strong as Lily, so he was forced to jump off the horse directly. Slide back. The moment it fell to the ground, he was still a little reluctant, but Lily only shook his wrist, and the spear that he had made smooth suddenly seemed to become extremely strange, slippery as a snake, making it impossible for him to hold it firmly. He let go involuntarily, an unknown fire rising in his heart, and his body fell heavily to the ground. When he subconsciously wanted to stand up, Lily had already turned the spear in his hand and pointed the head at him. His movement to stand up almost caused the tip of the spear to penetrate his throat. The man in black subconsciously froze and did not dare to move. Lily sat on his horse and threw the spear to the ground with all her strength. With a clang sound, the tip of the gun was stuck on the ground, and the tail of the gun was still dangling. The rest of the people came to their senses and quickly used weapons to restrain the man in black. The remaining group of men in black lost their leader. Being so close, the power of the hand crossbow was no longer as effective as before. A group of soldiers escorting Lily rushed forward and chopped these people to pieces. Quickly brought the situation under control. "Girl, these must be the remnants of the deposed prince, most of the people were killed or injured." The leading soldier asked someone to hold the man in black with a knife, and most of the people began to clean the battlefield. No one thought that Lily looked delicate and frail, but in the blink of an eye she knocked down the man in black, who seemed to have good martial arts skills. They looked at her with a bit of horror. Lily heard the soldier's words and smiled. "One sound. I'm afraid the remnants of the deposed prince have been wiped out by now." "Prince Ye, long time no see." She snatched Prince Ye's original mount. When Prince Ye fell off the horse just now, the horse was a little frightened. At this time, it was still swinging the horse in a circle. Lily controlled the reins and allowed the restless horse to lead her in circles, but her eyes were condescendingly staring at Yeshiza, who was lying on the ground unable to move as several long knives were held to his neck. "Prince Ye," as soon as Lily finished speaking, the leading soldier exclaimed and subconsciously shouted, "Impossible. The Ye family of the Marquis of Nanping are also old men in the military. Prince Ye is now a favored minister of the emperor. There is no way he would do such a thing. What's more, our general highly respects Prince Ye. The girl can't say such nonsense." Deng Zhiz, who loved talents very much and had a very high reputation in the Yingzhou army. Before Yeshiza went to the battlefield unmarried, he had stayed in the Yingzhou area. At that time, Deng Zhiz, who liked him very much and made it clear several times that if he hadn't, his birth background is too high, otherwise he would definitely adopt such a talent as his adopted son and use it for himself. This soldier was someone close to Deng Zhizu and was deeply trusted by Deng Zhizu, so he was sent out to escort Lily this time. When Deng Zhizu said that he would accept Yeshizi as his adopted son, this soldier had heard it with his own ears. This time the new emperor wanted to quell the rebellion of the prince, so he asked Deng Zhizu to borrow troops. Deng Zhizu borrowed 40,000 troops without saying a word, which was equivalent to 1/3 of his own troops. Deng Zhizu's loyalty to the emperor was evident. Yeshiza was the emperor's confidant and was valued by Deng Zhizu. There was no reason for him to kill Lily, not to mention that she was just an ordinary woman. Hearing Beihi's words, he identified it as Prince Ye. Because of his loyalty to Deng Zhizu, this soldier also loved Yeshiza. As soon as Lily finished speaking, he felt slightly unhappy in his heart, and even the initial surprise at Lily's skills was diluted. Most of the time, his face darkened. In his heart, he still thought that the woman had long hair and short knowledge. It was just because of Zhang Hongii that he couldn't say this out loud. However, he couldn't help but feel that Zhang Hongii was a hero in his life, but he lost his head and was fascinated by beauty. He fell in love with such a woman. The good impression she had on Lily along the way was mostly dissipated now. The soldier spoke with a cold face. Lily didn't pay attention to his attitude. She just stretched out her hand and flicked the silver gun shaft stuck on the ground, shaking it like a buzzing sound. Wandering around. If you don't believe it, just pull off the towel and take a closer look. As soon as she finished speaking, the man in black who was pinned to the ground suddenly said, "Who are you?" At this moment, Lily revealed his identity, and Yeshiza felt like a turmoil in his heart. He was ordered to intercept Lily. He only knew that the person he wanted to intercept this time was the wife of Zhang Hongii, the adopted son of Deng Zhizu, who was sent to the capital. He did not know that who is his wife. He lurked here for 2 days and finally got there. As soon as they met, he wanted to kill someone and seize the car. At first, it went very smoothly, but he didn't expect that this woman he thought was the best to win. But he tried his best at the last moment and made himself fall into a big trap. At first, Prince Ye didn't actually recognize Lily. He just felt that she looked very familiar. But until he took away his silver gun and was forced to dismount from his horse, Prince Ye suddenly remembered that she was there. When he was in Yingzhou City, he led people into the city that day, but met a Yingzhou policeman and a young woman. At that time, the little woman also reached out and snatched the whip away from the deputy general's hand. At that time, he felt that the woman looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen her before. When he met her again, he heard her again. He revealed his identity in one breath. Logically speaking, Zhang Hong'ai was just a small butcher in Yingzhou before he joined the army. Prince Ye also asked about his identity. This woman could marry him because she was from a different background. If you are not tall, how can you recognize yourself? Thinking of the inexplicable familiar feeling in his mind, and hearing Lily calling out his name at this moment, Ye Shize was stunned. When he was picked off his horse by a woman, and when she called out his name in that careless tone, and saw her sitting on the tall horse staring at him, Ye Shize felt a sense of humiliation in his heart, and he couldn't help but ask. After saying this, the soldier beside Lily couldn't bear it anymore, jumped off his horse and tore off the towel covering his face. Ye Shize's handsome and indifferent face appeared in front of everyone. Although under such circumstances, he still maintained the frost on his face, but several big knives were held on his neck, and the arrogance between his eyebrows was still suppressed by several swords. Fear and embarrassment were replaced. "It's really you," the soldier was greatly stimulated when he saw Ye Shize's face. He grabbed the black cloth covering his face and shouted in disbelief. Humph! Ye Shize's identity was exposed at this time and his eyes narrowed. The person who originally held the knife to his neck discovered his identity and subconsciously pulled the long knife away. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1029. What's going on? I originally thought that the group of people who robbed and killed Lily could never belong to Ye Shize. When Lily called out his identity, the leader had refuted it. At this time, the evidence was placed in front of everyone. The survivors all withered. The emperor borrowed troops from Deng Zizhu to redress his rebellion. At this time, his favorite general was ambushing here to kill Deng Zizhu's men. The soldier's face showed a startled look, and Lily sneered. "I guess that Prince Ye did this for Deng Zizhu." As soon as she finished speaking, Prince Ye, who had a cold expression on his face, frowned, as if he had been stepped on and was about to struggle. He was pushed to the ground again. He pursed his lips tightly, a lot of cold sweat broke out on his forehead and hair, and asked loudly, "Who are you?" "What do you mean, girl?" No one paid attention to Ye Shize's question at the moment. Instead, after hearing Lily's words, they couldn't help but ask her. After all, Lily has experienced many missions, and she may not necessarily be better at conspiracy than others, but now that this matter is placed in front of her one by one, it is not difficult for her to guess. What kind of person the new emperor is can be seen from the moment he ascended the throne and began to settle accounts after the fall. He is scheming and ruthless. Now he is suffering from internal and external troubles. Outside, Lulan and other tribes are looking at him. Inside, there are still remnants of the deposed prince who want to sleep with him. The most important thing is that after the deposed prince attempted to rebel, the new emperor discovered that he had no troops to use, and he would not be reconciled to this. As far as I know, in the capital, in addition to the personal guards directly affiliated with the emperor, the two armies of Kimin and Yulin each have about 5,000 soldiers. Daki has a total of 6 magistrates. The total number of troops is about 550,000, but the military strength is scattered in the hands of each prefecture, and the emperor cannot touch it. He cannot touch it, but every year he has to allocate a large amount of military pay, money, rice, and grain to the hands of these 6 prefectures. How can the emperor be willing to do so? There are no men and horses in his hands. It's like the tiger, the king of beasts, has lost its claws. Although it still holds the throne of an emperor, if it has no military power and gets the title of emperor, it is just a bluffing paper tiger. The emperor is young and ambitious, unwilling to be controlled by others, and will definitely find a way to solve this dilemma. Especially this rebellion by the deposed prince will probably make the king of Yu, who suddenly ascended the throne that day, think twice. The majestic emperor. But he has to borrow troops from his subordinates. I guess the emperor must be unwilling to do so. Lily stretched out her hand to lie on the horse's neck and touched the soft temple hair. The horse sneezed loudly in his nose, and the crown prince's face became even more ugly at this time. Master Deng is loyal to the emperor, and he loves Zhang Hongyi very much. He is willing to lend troops to redress the emperor's rebellion. Firstly, it is for the sake of Daqi Zhongshan Shiji, and secondly, it is also for Zhang Hongyi, his godson, to prosper in the future. But in order to borrow troops, the emperor, the nice words he said that day were spoken casually. He must have hated Master Deng in his heart, thinking that he was taking the opportunity to threaten. The 6 prefects of Daqi had become a serious problem for the emperor. How could he still agree to take more money from under his nose? A magistrate comes. What about threatening his throne? Lily smiled. When the people around him heard this, their expressions changed. Yeshizag gritted his teeth and his whole body became stiff. He asked again, "Who are you?" Lily ignored him. "How can we allow others to sleep soundly on the side of the bed?" The emperor borrowed the military strength of Deng Zhihu to redress the rebellion. He was also afraid that Zhang Hongyi would become the Zhihu and join forces with Lord Deng. He wanted to abolish the 6 major Zhi's house and centralize military power. It's a pity that the emperor has no power in his own hands, and the 6 prefectures have their own climate, so the only way is to have these 40,000 elite soldiers in Zhang Hongyi's hands. When she said this, a group of soldiers still didn't understand anything, and everyone was confused. Feeling a chill on his back, Prince Ye's face was as golden as paper. At this time, he could no longer find the arrogance and indifference of a wealthy family in his eyes, and instead became a little panicked. Zhang Hongyi is a little person who suddenly emerged from Yingzhou. He has no father or mother. How can he have any weaknesses? He is nothing more than me, the wife he brought home. When Lily said this, she paused. That fool Zhang Hongyi. On the one hand, I worked for the emperor to quell the rebellion, and he probably dreamed of becoming a state shepherd in the future. On the other hand, the emperor stabilized him and sent Prince Ye to hold me hostage, hoping to seize the military power from him. He must value me. For a person like the emperor, it would be easy to trick him out of his mouth. Prince Ye used me as bait. If Zhang Hongyi was fooled, he would just receive his 40,000 troops, fight back to Yingzhou, and take advantage of Deng Zhihu's unpreparedness to seize his military power. To recover those 80,000 soldiers and horses. If Yingzhou is captured and the 5 major prefectures are defeated one by one, the emperor must have a plan in mind. As for what kind of plan it is, I, a little woman, have no idea. In the plot, Prince Ye only appeared in Yingzhou a few years later. Lily also understood now. It should be that Zhang Hongyi did not interfere as much as he did now in the plot. He did not join the army and was still in the camp. Zhou became an ordinary pig butcher. Prince Ye hurriedly entered Yingzhou city that day, probably because Deng Zhihu was thirsty for talents. Back then, he wanted to accept you as his adopted son, and he should have said something to give you military strength. After Lily finished speaking, Prince Ye, her expression suddenly changed. The soldier who escorted her did not say a word, but his expression was a bit ugly. His hands were pressed on the long knife at his waist. Yes, my lord did say that day that if Prince Ye was not from the Haofu, such a talent will definitely be cherished by his subordinates, but it is a pity that Prince Ye comes from a waiting family, so there is no need for him to promote him. If he gets the love and protection of Deng Zhihu, then Prince Ye is very likely to be like Zhang Hongyi. If he receives troops from Deng Zhihu today, he might be able to become a man of his own in the future. It is precisely because of Lord Deng's words that the Emperor and Prince Ye were definitely not in a hurry in the early years. The Emperor knew Deng Zhihu's character, so Deng Zhihu was the most powerful among the major Zhai's house, but because of his character it's easy to figure out, but it's actually the easiest to deal with. Therefore, the first person the Emperor deals with in the plot is definitely not Deng Zhihu, but someone else. It is precisely because of this that Zhang Hongii did not appear suddenly in the plot, nor was he adopted as his adopted son by Deng Zhihu. Therefore, Prince Ye only went to Yingzhou a few years later. I am afraid that when he went to Yingzhou, it was for Deng Zhihu's centaur in hand. As for whether Lily's guess was correct or not, it no longer matters at this point. The original owner in the plot does not care about these national affairs. She only focuses on the love between her children. When she sees Ye Shizi, she only thinks of the past grudges. Then he was unwilling to die like an ant, so how could he know that there were so many? But because Zhang Hongii was suddenly adopted by Deng Zhihu as his adopted son, and more than 100,000 men and horses were given 40,000 to him. The remaining troops in Deng Zhihu's hands were less than 100,000. The pot of soup was divided, and there would still be Prince Ye again in the future. Lily smiled, and her eyes fell on Ye Shizi. That's why the Emperor is anxious and wants to attack Deng Zhihu first, right? Her almond-like eyes met Ye Shizi's slender eyebrows. There was a smile in his eyes, and when he smiled, there was a silkworm lying under his eyes. He seemed to have seen it somewhere, but no matter what Ye Shizi thought, he couldn't remember it. You. Prince Ye, do you still want to ask me who I am? Lily tilted her head, as if she knew what Prince Ye had not said yet, and sighed, I'm really embarrassed to say it. It's easy to make you laugh. In the past the old friend of the Zhou family, the Zhou family who was engaged to you in the confiscated Changboa mansion, is me. Prince Ye, nobles forget things a lot, and I'm afraid they have long forgotten it, right? When Lily said this, she couldn't help but he immediately burst out laughing. When Prince Ye heard this, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning and was completely stunned. She spoke her identity so happily, without any hesitation to hide it. She finished her words with a smile. Prince Ye was dumbfounded, staring at her face and speechless. Yes, no wonder she could tell her identity at once. An ordinary woman from Yingzhou City actually knew who he was and could recognize him. At first, Prince Ye was a little confused, but now he didn't feel surprised at all. This face, if you look closely, does have some impression. I felt vaguely familiar before. I always felt that I had seen it somewhere, but I didn't think of it in that way, so I never guessed that she might be from the Zhou family. Maybe he should have thought that way, but he was too confident. Subconsciously, he didn't even think that the woman he didn't want, the daughter of the Zhou family who had been raised in a boudoir, would actually be willing to marry a butcher after being relegated. And keep it that way. He always thought that the Zhou family would not survive. On the day when the Zhou family was sent into exile, he had taken a look when he came back from doing errands for the emperor. The Zhou family who had not left the slightest impression on him was dressed in grey. She was wearing a prison uniform, her hair was disheveled, and her thin figure looked like she couldn't stand it. He had stayed in Yingzhou, and a lady like her might not even survive in Yingzhou. In the past, his impression of Mrs. Zhou, his nominal future wife, was that she wore a beautiful dress and looked virtuous and quiet. The impression Zhou made on him that day was similar to that of other noble ladies in the capital. And besides, he didn't take her into his heart, because at the beginning of their engagement, the king of Yu, who had not ascended the throne at that time, told him that his future wife would not be her, and the Ye family had already served him. Suitable candidate, Ye Haoyi agreed to marry the Zhou family that day, but it was just to paralyze the prince's attention. The wooden figure like ex-fiancée in his heart had been erased that day when he saw her in prison clothes. He was careful not to meet anyone again. Why did he remember her? When he met her in Yingzhou that day, he thought she looked familiar, but he couldn't relate to the woman he remembered as pale and thin, with a bit of beauty but couldn't make him stop. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1030. At this time, Lily was lying on her horse with a smile. She was wearing an ordinary cloth dress, with her long hair held loosely. She didn't have the complicated hairpins or fancy clothes before, but she looked better than before. The impression was even more impressive. Yeshiza was speechless. He did not expect that he would stand tall and watch her being detained and guarded that day, while he watched with cold eyes. It has only been a few years now, but she has become a prisoner. She sits on the horse and stares at him with a smile. It is true that the situation has changed and the retribution is not good. Thinking of what she said before, Prince Ye never dreamed that a waste like the Zhou family could raise such a knowledgeable girl who could accurately express the emperor's thoughts. It was a pity. He himself didn't know what he was regretting, but he felt vaguely embarrassed in his heart, and he didn't want her to see the side of him. If someone else pulled him under the horse today, I'm afraid he would still be able to tell himself he endured the humiliation, pretended to surrender and then found a way to regain the disadvantage, but once he found out that the person who captured him was the chess piece that he had never seen before, the feeling of humiliation was stronger than ever. Yeshiza was born as a proud son of heaven. He was of good family background, tall in appearance, talented, and good at literature and martial arts. He had an excellent friendship with the King of Yu since he was a child. After successfully helping the King of Yu win the throne, he became a leader among the children in the capital. The emperor had made it clear to him that if he handled his errand properly on this trip, he would be crowned the Duke of Nangguo. He would be hereditary and the Ye family would be glorious. At that time, the emperor's words were still in my ears, but now it seems like a mirror. It's no longer within reach. Zhang Hongii is already brave. If he gets another scheming wife, the emperor will not be able to control him in the future. Whether it was his loyalty to the emperor or the fact that Yeshiza had some shady feelings in his bones that he was unwilling to admit. At this moment, a hint of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Mrs. Zhou should have died on the way to Yingzhou when her family was raided that day. She shouldn't be alive now, especially since she was his fiancée in name only. Now that he is married to a vulgar and reckless husband, he has also suffered losses at her hands twice. This is even more intolerable for Yeshiza, who has been blessed with countless honors at a young age. Kill her. This thought lingered in his mind. If he killed Lily, Zhang Hongii would be in a state of confusion. Such a brave and foolhardy man would not be in danger. Once she dies, these people can be easily taken down by himself. He practiced martial arts when he was young and has been in the army for many years. His skills are not bad. As long as these people die here, his mission can still be completed. The emperor's plan would not be ruined. No one knew that he had been left behind by a woman, and no one knew that this woman would be the legitimate daughter of the Zhou family that he once looked down upon. Everyone gasped, obviously when Lily revealed her identity. It was not only Yeshiza who was surprised, but also the group of people who accompanied Lily to Beijing and survived. It's really a coincidence. Everyone was speechless looking at Yeshiza's green and white face. Lily calmed down the horse and glanced at the capital not far away. After delaying for a while, the sky was already dark. The morning air still carries the smell of earth and vegetation. Every time he took a breath into his chest, there was a moist and clear feeling of mist, mixed with a faint trace of blood. Okay, let's talk about old times. We also made our identities clear to each other, and it's done again. If you guys have packed up, it's time to go into the city, right? I'm afraid the emperor is waiting to invite him to the palace over Zhang Hongai's side. Let's discuss it. Rewards for merit, Lily said with a smile, emphasizing the words rewards for merit. Her voice was soft, and her expression now showed an indescribable sarcasm, and she stared at the ground. Prince Ye, who had a mixed expression, looked at him. Prince Ye probably hasn't given up yet, right? When Ye Shizi heard her words, his brows furrowed, and heaven and man were at war in his heart. Lily's expression seemed to see through all the thoughts in his heart. This feeling was extremely unpleasant. He wanted to refute, but before he could speak, he felt that his refutation seemed guilty and short of breath. Lily's eyes and tone made him she felt uncomfortable in her heart. She clenched her hands into fists and tightened them again. When she saw Lily's eyes, there was a smile at the corner of her mouth. Compared with a few years ago, her eyebrows and eyes were much longer, and her temperament was also different from that of a few years ago. The virtuous and gentle person he used to be had some changes. For some reason, the feeling developed in the battlefield told him that Lily didn't try her best when she just took his weapon. If he took action rashly, he might not be able to bear the consequences. I don't know what happened to a girl in the boudoir in the past few years. He closed his eyes and took action now. If he succeeds, there is no need to say anything. If he fails, there is only death. Even if Lily does not kill him, the emperor will do it, for if he is silenced, he will definitely die. One end is Qingyun Road, and the other is the underworld gate. Do you want to gamble or not? He hesitated for a while and finally let go of his hand. I was indeed sent by the emperor, but what you said before was pure nonsense. The emperor just ordered me to be here to kill the remaining members of the deposed prince. In the end, Prince Ye did not dare to bet. He had parents and a wife, and he is young and promising, with a bright future. If he is humiliated today, he can find a way to solve it later, but if he dies now, he is really dead. As soon as he finished speaking, Lily smiled and didn't say whether she believed him or not. She just shook the reins with her hand. Whatever you say is what you say. She pinched the horse's belly with her legs and shouted. The horse spread its hooves and ran towards the foot of the capital in the right direction. It was already half a quarter of an hour later when everyone cleaned up the aftermath and tied up Prince Ye to follow. Zhang Hongai's 40,000-strong army was stationed outside the capital. There must have been a fierce battle here the day before, and the blood stains sprayed on the city walls had not yet been cleaned up. When Lily came to the city gate, the soldiers were setting up pots to cook. A group of soldiers could not enter the city without the emperor's call. Otherwise, the remnants of the deposed prince would be eliminated, and Zhang Hongai would be labeled as a rebel. When he heard Lily's arrival, Zhang Hongai came out of the tent in a panic. His hair was still messy, his beard was not shaved, and he was wearing a soft green cloth robe. He ran out with bare feet. It was already dark now, but the city gates were locked. The capital had been sealed off a few days ago due to the siege of the deposed prince and his rebel army. No one was allowed to go out for the time being. Zhang Hongai didn't expect Lily to arrive in the capital so quickly. He originally thought that he would have to wait for another day or two. But he didn't expect Lily to come so quickly. Daughter-in-law, he stretched out his arm to hug Lily's waist, and the other hand hung softly by his side. The green robe on his body must have been put on in a hurry when he came out. At this moment, there was a sweat towel around his waist. Before he was tied neatly and before anyone touched Lily, Lily could already smell the blood on his body. Injured, Lily took a step back, but his hand was empty, and he desperately wanted to come and catch her again. Hearing Lily's question, Zhang Hongai grinned and glanced behind him casually. He saw the person escorting Lily behind his back with Ye Shizi tied up behind his back, and slowly followed him into the camp. Naturally, he recognized Prince Ye at a glance. His brother died at the hands of Prince Ye that day, something Zhang Hongai did not mention later. But it is firmly in my mind. Yeshiza was originally supposed to be in the capital. When did he leave the city and was tied up by a group of people? Zhang Hongyi did not open his mouth to ask in a hurry. Instead, he only glanced at it, withdrew his gaze and nodded. A slight injury, nothing to worry about. Lily could tell if he was slightly injured by smelling the blood. She didn't talk nonsense to Zhang Hongyi, she just took off his clothes and went to see the injury. In public. Except for the patrolling soldiers not far away. There were also soldiers who escorted Lily all the way. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes almost popped out, and Zhang Hongyi smiled in his eyes. It had been a long time since the two separated, and he was no longer the one who blushed when Lily touched him. Zhang Hongyi became angry. At this time, he grabbed his clothes tightly and pressed Lily's hand on his chest. It was not that he was afraid that she would tear off his clothes in front of everyone, but he simply didn't want his boudoir pleasure to be enjoyed by others. Although he didn't blush, he still refused to admit defeat as before, shouting loudly. "As soon as you come, pull on my clothes. When you turn around, I'll take them off myself so you can have a good time touching me." As soon as he said these words, the people not far away who listened with their ears pricked up laughed out loud. Lily listened to the nonsense he was talking about and was not serious, so she stretched out her palm to slap him. Not only did he not hide, but he also lowered his head so that she could reach her. At the same time, he cautiously opened his eyes and warned, don't hit, if your hand hurts after a spanking, it will be my fault again." Yeshiza, who was tied up on the horse, saw a complicated look in his eyes when he saw the two people getting along. Zhang Hongyi is now regarded as a general in the army. He has risen very quickly in the past 2 years. He is not afraid of death and is said to be brave enough to be invincible. Deng's his who admires him very much. He did not expect this. A tiger general, who feared his wife as much as his life, was beaten by a woman in front of many subordinates, which made Yeshiza feel indescribable. This woman was once unwanted by him, but now she was treated like a piece of jewelry. Zhang Hongyi, a reckless man who he once looked down upon, had robbed Deng's his who of his love. Now he has picked up a woman he didn't want, but he dotes on her so much that he even lets her climb on top of him to dominate him. Yes, even in front of all his subordinates, he would make her happy without any shame. When Yeshiza saw Lily beating Zhang Hongyi, she clearly had a smile on her lips. At this moment, he couldn't even explain how he felt in his heart. It was definitely out of the question that he liked him, and at most he was a little unwilling to do so. He was born as a favored son of heaven, and he was also smart by nature. Logically speaking, he should be a winner in life. But now that he met this unattractive couple, the two of them were quarreling and laughing, but it seemed to make Prince Ye feel uncomfortable all over. Zhang Hongyi's clothes were torn off in the tent. A knife wound was cut diagonally from his left shoulder blade to the right side of his waist and abdomen. The blood on the tied linen cloth had not yet dried. Zhang Hongyi had just stood up and walked around, and now the wound had cracked again, and his face turned a little pale, but he seemed not to feel the pain in his body and just stared at Lily and smiled stupidly. "What are you looking at?" Lily slapped his face with a pop sound. He laughed twice, stretched out his hand to rub his cheek, and then moved the other side of his face towards her. "Hit it again." The two have been separated for these years, and he always feels like she is by his side in his dreams. It was as if when the slap on his face sounded, the sweet and sour feeling in his heart overwhelmed the pain in his body. Only the shadow of Lily was reflected in his pupils, and nothing else could be seen. "This is the first time I heard someone ask for another beating after being beaten." Lily did as he wished and slapped him in the face again. He licked his lips and stared at Lily for a long time. Suddenly he grinned widely, and regardless of her struggle, he pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. "Why are you so crazy?" When Lily saw his wound, she actually didn't dare to struggle vigorously. Zhang Hongyi rested his chin on the top of her head, and the newly grown stubble was stuck in her hair, which was a little itchy. He seemed to have noticed Lily reaching out to scratch it, and even rubbed his chin deliberately. "You miss me so much. Even meeting you seems fake. Now I feel at ease." He rubbed his chin and put his hand around Lily's waist. He rubbed his thumb twice on her waist through the clothes, and he thought of something, and suddenly he calmed down. Lily was so close to him that she could hear his heart beat faster. "Now that you are here, your man has become somewhat successful. He can afford to buy you maids and wear silks and satins for you. When we enter the city, I will buy you 2 of the embroidered shoes you like. Pair, let's put it away if we can't finish wearing it. I want to hire a girl to comb your hair. I bought all the rouge, gouache, and so on. If you put it on, it will definitely look better than others." When he said this, before Lily could speak, he stretched out his hand to pull her. The palm of his hand placed her palm against his chest. The blood stains in the linen moistened Lily's palms. But he seemed not to feel any pain. "We've been putting it off for so many years. This time we go to Beijing, it's time to get things done. I've always been left hanging like this. Isn't that good? Look at other people my age, the kids are all running around." As he spoke, the voice was sincere, and Lily listened quietly without making a sound. Zhang Hongyi softened his tone and coaxed her in a low voice. "Daughter-in-law, you are my wife, everything about me is yours, your man's heart, your man's body, money, and salary. Even if you take my life, I won't blink an eye." He said here, his words he paused and said, "But there are only 2 things I can't promise you. First, I can't give you the little brat named Yet. He is the murderer of Lu Liu's mother and son. When I became sworn brother with my brother that day, I couldn't give it to you. We should live and die together. I am greedy for life and can't bear to leave you, but I swore in front of Lu Liu's grave that I would avenge him." After he said this, Lily remained silent. She wanted to nod, but Zhang Hongyi, as if he was afraid that she would speak, he pressed her head heavily with one hand, and then spoke again. "Secondly, raising a man after marriage is absolutely impossible. To calm the emperor's chaos, this business once you're done, you won't have to worry about food and clothing for the next few decades. I'll take you to Zhangzhou and I'll watch over you every day from now on. You won't go anywhere. You are not allowed to take another look at this wild man." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi felt that Lily's hand that was pressed against his chest stiffened, and he continued. "Especially the one named Yet. I know you were engaged to him, but now I am your man. I—" Before he could finish his words, Lily couldn't help but reach out and grab his hand that was hanging on his chest. A strand of messy hair that was not tied up was pulled hard. "Oops!" he screamed, his eyes wide and round. "Why did you hit someone again? Do you think Yeshizi is the man I want to steal?" Lily laughed angrily. Zhang Hongyi felt something was wrong and subconsciously let go of her. He instinctively wanted to hide, but he had been separated from her for a long time and didn't want to put his hands on her. Moved away from her. Isn't it? In fact, when Lily asked him, Zhang Hongyi guessed that he was wrong, but now seeing her smiling and narrowing her eyes in anger, Zhang Hongyi loved her for being so angry in his heart. Like this, he actually regretted it from the day he joined the army. That bitch Yer tricked him into joining the army. He jumped in and separated from her for many years. Whenever he thought of the way she chased him and beat him, and how she combed his hair and sewed it. Looking at Yishi's appearance, I began to miss home. As he performed more and more meritorious services, Deng's his who appreciated him more and more. He was not short of money and salary. Even now that he was in a high position, he responded to everything. But in fact, what he thought about most was still those 2 broken houses and the one sitting in them. Just people sewing by the door. Later, he ate a lot of rare and delicious food, but he still felt that it was not worth the bowl of potato crispy rice she had cooked. It was also delicious when boiled and soaked in water. Seeing her glaring at him and sneering, Zhang Hong'ai knew that she was angry and wanted to hit someone, but he deliberately provoked her. If not, why are you doing it with him? What's the point of that pretty boy? I'll just punch her. You can beat him until he has teeth all over the floor. Lily sneered and didn't say much to him, but her eyes began to wander around the tent. She saw the armor hanging on the shelf nearby, and a pair of axes hanging on the side. She stood up to get it, and Zhang Hong'ai followed behind with a grin. It doesn't hurt when this girl hits someone. Normally, he has to move his fleshy part to her and hit her, knowing how to get something. In order to prevent her from feeling the pain after hitting her hand, Zhang Hong'ai remembered that one time she hit her, and the palm of her hand was red. She didn't feel it, but he felt distressed for a long time. At that time, he didn't know how to respond. Even though he was doing something wrong, he thought there was something wrong with him. It was obviously her who was hurting, but he was the one who hurt her. Later, he realized that he missed her deeply, but he didn't know it at that time. He was still laughing when he saw Lily picking up the axe. Be careful not to drop it and hit your foot. You won't blame me for crying later. Zhang Hong'ai was born with amazing powers, and the axe was tailor-made for him. Each handle weighs several dozen kilograms, and it would be heavy for most people to lift. How could she, a girl, twist it? But the next moment, Zhang Hong'ai saw Lily lifting the shining axe. The steel blade of the axe reflected half of her profile. She grabbed the pure steel axe handle with both hands and chased him. Obviously he just set people off. When Zhang Hong'ai saw this scene, he was so frightened that he quickly raised the curtain and went out. I have no law. I usually just hit me, but now I am carrying an axe. There are no rules at all. I see that I am easy to bully, so I beat me from time to time. The axe in Lily's hand shook brightly twice. The corners of Zhang Hong'ai's mouth trembled, and he subconsciously stretched out his hands to hold it. He didn't dare to hide anymore, for fear that she wouldn't be able to catch him safely. The axe fell and was so sharp that it could cut off the sole of her foot. He was still injured, but he didn't feel much pain, but when he thought about her being injured and bleeding, he began to feel nervous and worried. He originally wanted to hide, but now his steps were instinctively fast. He ran towards her and coaxed her repeatedly. Ancestor, you can't play with this. If it falls, it won't cut off your foot, and if it hits you, your bones will break. This thing is dangerous and you can't touch it. He spoke like a coaxing child, stretched out his hand to take the axe away, and let Lily glare at him. He felt a little uneasy until he hung the axe up, so he pulled the person far away before giving up. Zhang Hong'ai, do you think I'm stupid for stealing someone and bringing back someone named Ye? Lily pinched him, and he yelled hey, but refused to let go. Lily knew that what he just said was just intentional. He said that, but he still twisted his ears and vented his anger before telling what happened early this morning. Zhang Hong'ai was still smiling at first, but as soon as she finished speaking, his expression changed. He sat up straight, rubbed his ears that were red from Lily's scratches, and frowned. The Emperor wants to seize my adoptive father's military power. He lowered his voice and gritted his teeth. You still want to threaten me with you? This piece of shit, if I had known that I should have joined forces to depose the prince yesterday, instead of kill him. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. He stretched out his hand and slapped his thigh. He didn't know what he thought of, but he suddenly sneered, you really have more eyes than that sieve. I almost fell for him. Hold on to your sore feet. The people of Yingzhou, especially those who were slaves like Zhang Hong'ai, were obviously not as loyal to the emperor as the people of Daqi who were raised as docile as quails. Yingzhou has been a place where the emperor's grace has not been felt since the founding of the dynasty. The people there did not have a strong sense of belonging to the imperial court. The reason why Zhang Hong'ai quelled the chaos for the emperor was first of all for his own sake. His future was purely for Deng Zhihu's kindness. But at this time, the emperor was plotting against him. He was not so loyal to the emperor, and he was not brainwashed by the idea that the emperor wanted his ministers to die, and the ministers had to die, so he would naturally blurt out the words that went against the emperor. If he had said this a few years ago, it would have been like a fantasy, but it was different now. Now he has 40,000 elite troops in his hands. Even if he lost some troops in yesterday's battle with the deposed prince, he still has more than 30,000 elite troops. The maximum garrison in Kyoto is 20,000 troops. If he wants to attack the capital at this time, it is not possible. Impossible. Even if the emperor just wants to summon the 6 major state pastors to come to the capital to protect him, by the time those people come to the capital, the emperor's bones will probably be stiff. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1031. Originally, he joined the army just to marry and have children, to give his wife a good life in the future, and to earn a share of the family business for his children and grandchildren. He had no great goal or ideal of being loyal to the country. What the emperor is doing now, asking people to attack Lily, especially Yeshiza, was like touching his scales. Zhang Hongyi began to ask people to open the city gates in Beijing to allow his army to enter. The remaining troops of the deposed prince had just been dealt with. How dare the imperial court allow soldiers like him to enter the city? Once the people in the city refused, Zhang Hongyi was also a daring fool. He ignored the threat on the city and even started to order an attack on the city. The emperor really didn't expect Zhang Hongyi to act so haphazardly, and everyone was confused. The guards in the capital were already exhausted due to the siege by the deposed prince and others a few days ago. At this time, Zhang Hongyi's team attacked and everyone on the city wall panicked. When the city gate was breached, he led his troops to rush in. When they entered the city was in chaos. Screams and cries could be heard everywhere. Many crazy people rushed out of the city, but they were blocked back before they could leave the city. First, he dispersed 20,000 troops in the army and captured the emperor's personal guards in the capital. Zhang Hongyi personally led the troops to sweep around the capital. Every door was closed tightly wherever he went. The bustling capital in the past was now as quiet as like a dead city. Yeshiza was tied to the horse at the rear. His handsome face that was proud and indifferent in the past was now indescribably embarrassed and gloomy. Zhang Hongyi turned around for a while before patting the horse back and asking Lily, "Where is the Nanping Marquis mansion?" After entering the city, he asked someone to grab a carriage and let Lily sit in it. At this time, he heard him ask questions. Lily opened the car curtains and saw the serious look on his face. She wondered if he had experienced a power struggle before. There were still some beads of sweat on his forehead. "I walked around twice and didn't see it. This capital is too big. It's not like Yingzhou, where people can spot it right away. There is an alley on the left and a corner here. Every place looks the same." He was still tense at first, but then he couldn't help it anymore and cursed. Yeshiza, who was tied up like a rice dumpling on the horse behind him, turned a little pale when he asked about the location of Ye mansion. "Zhang Hongyi, don't be stubborn. You are rebelling. Deng Lianxian will not be able to protect you from now on. Zhang Hongyi is too courageous and acts impulsively and without regard for the consequences." At this moment, he even dared to force his way into the city. If it were someone else, he would still hesitate, fearing that he would be labeled as a rebel, but he didn't seem to care about anything. It wasn't until he asked about the location of Ye mansion that Prince Ye remembered his parents and elders at home, and his wife at home. In his short life, he had seen the new emperor confiscating his family and exterminating his family because of the need to settle old accounts after the Yu King came to the throne. He even helped the new emperor to copy several companies. He should have become numb to the updates and replacements of famous families. But it's different now. Someone else died before, but now it's my turn. Zhang Hong'ai, this lawless bastard, dared to break down the city gates. He gritted his teeth when talking about the Ye family, as if he wanted to kill the Ye family. Prince Ye was really afraid that he would be harmful to his family. It was only then that he began to regret a little. He regretted that he had been too confident that day, when the emperor assigned him a task. He never thought that he would fail, which is why he ended up like this. Zhang Hong'ai was really lawless, and everyone was panicking at this time. He wanted to save the Ye family. But now he has become a prisoner and wants to save the Ye family. Of course it's just a fantasy. The only person who can still control Zhang Hong'ai at this time is probably the Lily Zhou who he once despised. Ye Shize was still thinking about how he was going to scare Zhang Hong'ai. He thought Zhang Hong'ai was just a rough guy with a simple mind and well-developed limbs. What he was afraid of was that he would act recklessly. If he could think of a way to cure him, he could find a way to cure him. Without his weakness, such a person is nothing more than an ordinary man with brute strength, and is nothing to be afraid of. Now you also have a wife and children. Deng Lian was not kind to you first. He lent you 40,000 elite soldiers, but you actually rebelled. I am not afraid that the emperor will blame him in the future. It doesn't matter if you die or not, you will be implicated. Ye Shize was still thinking about what he wanted to do. How to test out Zhang Hong'ai's weaknesses. Unexpectedly, as soon as he said these words, Zhang Hong'ai sneered, blinked at Lily, and shook the whip on his wrist. The whip drew a circle in the air and brought up there was a sonic boom, and the next moment Ye Shize saw only the shadow of a whip whipping towards his face. He was so frightened that he wanted to hide, but he was tied to a horse, and how could he escape? Ye Shize raised his face with a ferocious expression to hide, but unfortunately he avoided the disaster on his face, but the tail of the whip was still stuck to his right collarbone. At first, he only felt an unbearable soreness and numbness in his body, and the whip was as hot as oil. Then his body began to swing instinctively. After the initial numbness, the excruciating pain caused veins on his neck. They all jumped up. He couldn't even control his legs and began to swing, his body curled up on the horse's back, and he couldn't straighten up in pain. Scaring me? I haven't been scared since I was a kid. Just shut up when you're not supposed to talk. You little brat, I've wanted to beat you for a long time. His hand shook and he took back the whip. There was a mischievous smile on his rough face. My good brother asked you to take more care of me back then. Now the grass on the grave is as tall as a man. You are such a hot dog and you drink spicy food. What do you mean? Quite a lot. He moved his hands, and Prince Ye saw his move and clamped the horse tightly with his legs. The pain was like maggots attached to his bones, making him sweat so hard that he broke out in cold sweat on his back, and the hairs on his body stood on end. Prince Ye was born into a famous family. When had he ever suffered such hardship? Hearing the dirty curses from Zhang Hong'ai's mouth, he felt humiliated in his heart, but he didn't dare to say a word. This man is fearless and has no rules in his behavior. Don't let him hit someone if he is annoyed at this moment. I'm afraid if he continues, he will kill himself on the spot. Even if the emperor can avenge himself in the end, how can he bring himself back to life? You can't stand one whip? My brother got 20 or 30 lashes back then. You bastard, if I hadn't had something serious to do today, I would have chopped off your head on the spot. He said he was originally a rogue in Yingzhou, and he was a generous character. He is affectionate and righteous to his brothers, and he loves and cares for his own woman, but that does not mean that he will be equally moral and sensible towards others. After Zhang Hong'ai finished cursing, he saw Ye Shize holding back the pain. Not daring to speak out, he sneered and changed his appearance again when facing Lily. He carefully bent his head and smiled. He. Daughter-in-law, show me the way. That bitch surnamed Ye didn't look down on you that day. I want to show him what he missed. Let's hold the wedding in the Ye mansion and let those blind people from the Ye family help us. I think they know best what you should have when setting up a wedding hall. He remembered what Lily said about how she was kicked out of the capital after the Zhou family was ransacked. Zhang Hongyi didn't know a word of Chinese characters, and he didn't necessarily understand etiquette and rules. He couldn't say anything nice to coax Lily, but he loved his wife as much as others. He doesn't know the rules, but others do. The worst he can do is tie up the family to help him organize the wedding. Although it was precisely because the Zhou family was raided that day that the original owner was exiled. It was only then that he met Lily, but Zhang Hongyi only remembered the shame Zhou Dalin had brought to Lily in the past. He wanted to show the world that his woman was no worse than anyone else, and he had never thought of giving Lily to anyone. But no one can underestimate her. She was supposed to marry into the family that day, but she didn't, so she robbed the family to consummate her marriage, and the two of them just arranged the wedding. When he scolded Prince Ye just now, he was quite clever with his tongue. But now a pair of Lily. All he could do was giggle and couldn't say anything fluently. As soon as he said the words, he suddenly realized that something was wrong with what he said, and he hurriedly explained. It's not that you married into the family. You married me. You just used the family's mansion to build a new house for us. He wanted to speak out for Lily. Seeking justice, although his behavior is a bit childish like a child, there is no doubt about his intentions. Lily nodded and frowned slightly. Zhang Hongyi couldn't speak clearly when he was excited, but she understood what he meant. She pointed to the family's mansion, and a group of people rushed towards the family. When everyone kicked open the door of the family like wolves and tigers, amidst the screams of the family, a group of servants of the family were tied up and thrown away. He went to the side, beaten half to death, and screamed. The mother-in-law, maids, and others followed Zhang Hongyi's instructions and began to organize weddings at Ye's house. Under such circumstances, when everyone in the Ye family was feeling uneasy, they were still forced to smile. Red lanterns were hung outside the door, and a group of embroiderers hurriedly prepared wedding clothes and other items for Lily. In just a few hours, the Ye family was in a state of uproar. The main residence of the Ye family was being set up as a wedding hall at this time. The sky was darkening outside. The young emperor, who was wearing a dragon robe and with a somewhat reluctant face, clenched his hands into fists and placed them on his thighs, his chest rising and falling. Zhang Hongyi sent someone to pull him out of the palace and asked him to write an imperial edict conferring marriage. At this time, the emperor's dignity was trampled on by such a common man, and the anger in the emperor's heart can naturally be imagined. But he couldn't show even half of it. Even though he was furious at this time, he still had to squeeze out a smile. Daughter-in-law, I promised you a matchmaker and a gift, but it seems that it can't be done now. Fortunately, we happen to be in Beijing. Originally, I wanted to take it slow, but some people like to make trouble over nothing, so I can only wrong you. What I failed you in the future, you will make up for it 1,000 times as a man. Zhang Hongyi was wearing a makeshift red robe. He didn't know what he was wearing underneath, and it was bulging. The hall that was decorated as a wedding hall was quiet at this time. Except for the small sparks that occasionally exploded when the red candles were burning, the only thing that could be heard was Zhang Hongyi's voice. No one dared to express his anger. He grinned. He looked at Lily with soft eyes. Soldiers in armor stood outside, surrounding the entire Ye mansion. The dignitaries in the capital who were forced to come to watch the ceremony all looked down at their toes, and no one dared to make the slightest sound. I have wronged you all these years. My surname is Zhang. I only wanted to stay in Yingzhou, kill pigs and eat meat all my life, and be satisfied with the occasional drink. I never thought of marrying a lady, and others looked down on me. You are the only one who has never shown contempt for me. Everyone was afraid of him, treating him like a poisonous snake and beast. Only she treated herself like an ordinary person, speaking softly when she liked him, and scolding and beating him when she was unhappy. Now, when Lulu died, she hugged her tenderly without making a sound. For the first time in her life, someone noticed that his clothes were too small. They were all small things, but he remembered them all. When he recalled them, his eyes couldn't help but become softer. He had a lot to say. But at this moment in the wedding hall, he didn't want to tell these people anymore. He would have a lifetime to tell her slowly. Zhang Hong'ai wiped his face. His hands reached out awkwardly to straighten her clothes. The hands did not tremble when holding two axes weighing over 100 kilograms, but when he was trimming her phoenix crown, the fingertips were trembling so much that others could see clearly. Okay, no more nonsense. Hurry up and call me a gift. He Len might as well speak. The master of ceremonies was startled. He came to his senses and said a few auspicious words before starting to sing. When it came to paying homage to his parents, Zhang Hong'ai frowned. My parents have passed away a long time ago, so forget about it. Worshipping parents in heaven and earth has been a tradition in weddings since ancient times. Where is the point in saving it? The man who sang the ceremony turned a little pale. He looked at the young emperor sitting high in the middle and whispered. It's better to worship the emperor. As soon as he finished his words, Zhang Hong'ai sneered, his eyes like knives, behold the emperor? I haven't even endured the sound of my wife's head, how can the emperor bear it? He was also worried at this time. Anyway, the water was still flowing. His feet were wet even if they were not wet. When he entered the city, he had already rebelled against the emperor in name. He no longer had to pretend to be a chaste minister. As soon as he finished speaking, his evil-looking appearance scared the singer. His face turned pale, and no one dared to say anything when they encountered this devil. The emperor was so angry that his liver hurt, but he gritted his teeth and did not dare to speak. Lily was the calmest among the crowd. She raised her head and said, Zhang Hong'ai, do you still want me to kowtow to you? You wouldn't dare just now. He was looking fierce. All of a sudden, he was like a pug. He nodded and bowed, I kowtow for you, aren't you afraid that your knees will hurt and you will blame me later? In front of so many people, he didn't even have the slightest bit of shame. Lily felt vaguely that something was not quite right. Zhang Hong'ai was always a good face. In the past, when he was chased by her, he would never bow his head and admit his mistakes in front of the brothers. Instead, he would shout loudly. But now he opened his mouth to coax her in this way, as if something was about to happen. His eyelids kept twitching and he was a little uneasy, as if he wanted the wedding to be completed in a hurry. Lily endured the strange feeling in her heart and snorted. Zhang Hong'ai breathed a sigh of relief, stretched out his hand to hold her tightly, and motioned for the wedding to continue. There is no need to worship the masters and parents of heaven and earth, only husband and wife are left to worship each other. A loving couple bows. A happy marriage for 100 years, let's bow again. Be born early, bow 3 times. The singer was still afraid of Zhang Hong'ai glaring at him, so he finished the words tremblingly, the cowherd in the sky will meet the weaver girl, and the talented man on the earth will match the beautiful woman. Today the two families marry Qin and Jin, Ronghua wealth lasts forever. Zhang Hong'ai laughed twice, he is not a talented man, but he still marries a beautiful woman. At this time, when the hair tying ceremony was supposed to be done again, the maid had even brought the scissors and presented them to her, but someone outside shouted, repay. Yingzhou was in great danger. When the emperor ordered Yeshiza to ambush Beihe a few days ago, he had already united with the other 2 state pastors to prepare to attack Deng Zhihu. The emperor always made 2 preparations. That day he found that he had no troops to use. After learning from the pain, he decided to reduce the military power in the hands of the 6 magistrates. He chose Deng Zhihu as the first target. Deng Zhihu had the strongest strength among several magistrates. The strongest, originally the most difficult to deal with. but Deng Zhihu borrowed Zhang Hongai's 40,000 troops, leaving only about 100,000 troops in hand. He also had some to guard Zhao Kang, so it would be perfect to attack him at this time. He had said that the two magistrates would join forces, but Yingzhou might be under siege at this time. Zhang Hongai didn't even look at the scissors presented by the maid, and suddenly grinned at Lily. "Daughter-in-law, my adoptive father has been as kind to me as a mountain. My unlucky brothers in Yingzhou city are still here. I had a word with them that day. I don't want to be born in the same year, the same month and the same day, but I want to die in the same year, the same month and the same day. You men cannot be ungrateful. What I owe you must be paid back in the future. I will come back to handle this unfinished gift. You haven't said you want to marry me yet, but if I come back, you will be mine regardless of whether you agree or not." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to pull the clothes on his body, and loudly ordered, "Push out the entire Ye family and chop them up, take the emperor and go west." There were screams and curses in the Ye family, but he turned a deaf ear. Lily watched quietly as he pulled off the red wedding robe, revealing the green jacket underneath. He seemed to have expected this moment, and there was a lock on the jacket. "Zijia, I will leave 10,000 troops for you. Don't worry. I can trust the soldiers leading the way. If I come back, you girl will never be able to escape." "If so," he said, frowned, and turned to go out. "Go, if you can't come back, find someone and remarry." I'm afraid he had a premonition of leaving this time. He could obviously wait a while to consummate the relationship before leaving. But he probably had some feelings and didn't want to harm her. Lily's lips curled up, but she felt a little sad in her heart. Zhang Hongai looked carefree and unreasonable, but if he could take him into consideration, he would definitely repay him with his life. A scholar dies for someone who knows him well, and Deng Zhihu was kind to him. Now Deng Zhihu is in trouble. He knows that Yingzhou is now a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. He can lead 40,000 troops and live a good life, but he still has no hesitation in jumping into it. "Zhang Hongai, if you are going to die, I will take your 10,000 soldiers and horses and remarry. Your daughter-in-law will be slept with by others, the money you earned with your life will be spent by others, and the family fortune you saved will be inherited by other people's descendants." Lily tidied her phoenix crown slowly. Zhang Hongai, who was about to go out, turned around bitterly after hearing her words, strode towards her, and hugged her into his arms. "Angry? You bitch, you just love to piss me off. Don't talk like other people's bitches. Say something nice. I won't allow you to remarry. Even if I die, you have to protect me." At first he wanted to pretend to be generous, but when he thought of what she said, his heart was scratching like a cat's claws. "You stay with me when I die. I'll wait for you on the other side of Huangquan Road. No big deal. 18 years later, I'll be a good man again. I can marry you again and continue our relationship." He kept saying it. He still had to leave, but Lily couldn't keep him in the end. This is good, otherwise if the two really get married, how can she consummate the marriage? Zhang Hongai must have felt it, so he left at this time, leaving behind 10,000 troops. He killed all the Ye family members, looted most of the jewels in Beijing, and asked people to protect her and guard her in Beijing. He led troops to Yingzhou this time. 2 months later, the rebellion in Yingzhou was put down. He used the emperor to order Zhihu. The new emperor died in the chaos in Yingzhou, and Deng Zhihu won. Deng Zhihu proclaimed himself emperor, 2 rebellious Zhihu rebelled and proclaimed themselves emperor, and the remaining 3 major Zhihu surrendered in the face of Deng Liangxian's tyrannical power. When Deng's army escorted Deng Lian into the capital, Wang San entered the former Ye mansion. He brought a blood-stained comb and a torn green coat. "Brother said, let my sister-in-law decide what to do." Zhang Hongai was originally injured and rushed to Yingzhou with the injury, but the injury had already worsened. Thanks to Deng Zhihu's kindness, he was already prepared to sacrifice his life to repay his kindness. He bravely killed the enemy and led 30,000 troops to rescue Deng Zhihu from danger. Unfortunately, he ended up being wrapped in horse leather. The wooden comb with the large clump of hair wrapped around it looked to be old. It must have been touched frequently. Some places on the edge were worn and shiny. The unfinished meaning of tying the hair that day was actually already in his mind. It's been done. Wang San's eyes were red. In this chaos, several brothers who were seeking wealth died, and only he and Ye Er were left. Times make heroes, but those heroes are not easy to achieve. Lily held the wooden comb, as if she could recall the scene in the past when Zhang Hong'ai used the comb to comb his hair with a trembling hand. At that time, his expression was still a little green. She recalled that she was combing his hair. One time she saw that he had lost a piece of hair and asked him if he was bald. There were too many tasks to do. In fact, she had already taken it lightly. However, when she saw the thing in front of her and heard Zhang Hong'ai's last words brought by Wang San, she was told to do what she wanted. Lily raised the corner of her mouth, but her eyes began to astringent. Zhang Hong'ai, a nobody from Yingzhou City, can be said to be a well-deserved hero to this day. He valued love and justice, repaid Deng Liangxian's kindness and righteousness, shared life and death with his brothers, and was affectionate and protective of his wife. Lily Zhou, do you know what you missed? Heroes are not just born into famous families. Those who are well-dressed and good-looking do not mean they are the unparalleled heroes. Zhang Hong'ai is no worse than Ye Shizi, he is even more worthy of the title of hero than Ye Shizi. Lily Zhou, do you regret it? It's just that Lily Zhou didn't regret it. Lily didn't know clearly in her heart, she only vaguely felt that she had some unspeakable feelings. That day, Zhang Hong'ai stepped into the whirlpool for his wife. If it weren't for her change, I'm afraid he would still be an unambitious pig butcher in Yingzhou City. At worst, he could make money for a living and become an executioner. If you want to be ordinary and content, you won't end up like a corpse wrapped in horse leather. The ancients were right, it really is a gentle town, the tomb of heroes. Deng Liangxian proclaimed himself emperor, and named his adopted son Zhang Hong'ai the kingdom of Yiqi. His widow was named Queen of Qi, and the area from south of Zhangzhou to north of Huayan was designated as the king of Qi's fiefdom. He adopted Ye Er's son as his son and inherited the Zhang family's incense. She threatened Zhang Hong'ai that day by saying she would remarry, but in the end she defended it for him. To be continued.